San Luis Valley.
Yeah, good morning, Vern Hersink, Alamosa County Commissioner, and the new chair of the San Luis Valley TPR, and I believe we also have Vice Chair Gene Glover from Rio Grande County. Good morning.
Good morning. South Central.
Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted. John Galusha, Huerfano County Commissioner and Chair of the South Central TPR.
Okay, Southeast.
Ron Cook, Prowers County Commissioner.
Southwest.
Heather Alvarez, I'm the Town of Mancos Town Administrator, and I'm the new appointment to STAC. Sarah Hill is still our alternate.
Okay, Upper Front Range.
Good morning, Vince. Kevin Roswell, County Commissioner. I am the Vice Chair and alternate representative for STAC here on behalf of Commissioner John Becker.
Thank you. Do we ever get anybody for Eastern? Southern Ute? Butte Mountain.
Good morning, everyone. Brendan Adams, Transportation Specialist for the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe.
Good morning.
Good morning.
FHWA, John. Not yet. Bill. FTA.
Julia Weislow with FTA.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, on our agenda, the next item is approval of the minutes of our last month, February meeting.
Vince?
Yes?
You forgot about Pueblo.
Pueblo, did I miss Pueblo?
You did, and we have the best green chilies in all Colorado, and you forgot us.
Oh, no. I'm coming to Pueblo in a couple of weeks.
Uh-oh, okay. Well, Eva Cookleon, NPO manager, and Wendy Pettit and Greg George are also on the line. Thank you.
Okay. No, I didn't forget Pueblo. Wendy answered for it.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear her. Sorry.
Okay. I was going, how can I miss one?
You're right. I was sitting here. I was glad Eva spoke up. Good morning, Vince. How are you?
Good.
Vince Darius has his hand up.
Mr. Chair,
let's see. Darius.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Gary Beatty from Easter TPR is online as well for the attendance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I got you.
All right. I'm having phone issues this morning calling in.
Is it snowing there yet?
We had just a slight skiff this morning, but we are cloudy and looking like we might get something.
All right. Hopefully the moisture's good for the crops.
Yeah, we need some.
Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the February meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
This is Dick Elsner. Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Tony Olson, second.
Johnny. Are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none, is there anybody that disapproves approving the minutes? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes of the February meeting approved. Now, the next item on the agenda is Herman's report, but Herman is out and not with us today, and so we're going to just skip him. And so we're going to go to the Transportation Commission report. Well, the commission met last month and talked about a number of different things. We're always getting various rights of way condemnations and that types of thing. And so they talked about that. Budget workshop. We're gonna have a budget workshop too, for us to give it our recommendation. And so we'll be talking about that. Rest area. You know, rest area is one of those places where we think that we talk about it for a little while and then we forget about it. But I think it's a major thing right now. And so they talked about that and had a number of discussions in terms of what's going on. You know, one of the big rest areas that's getting updated is Vale. And so that continues to be actually a problem with funding. And so they're working on a number of different things with that. Okay, now the next item they talked about was federal discretionary grants. You know, one of the things that my TPR has put together, or Region 10 has put together, is a monthly meeting to talk about grants and various things dealing with grants. The last one we had was on the 29th of February, and they talked about DEI. I don't know if everybody knows what DEI is, but it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that's one of the new things that the grants want to see included in their applications. However, there's some controversy on that going on in the news, so we'll see how that comes about. Let's see here. Directive 1601. You know, 1601 is that interchange requests for approval to move on to doing plans and bidding and this type of thing. And we have one on I-76 and Well County Road 8. And so there's a lot of discussion about that. And it's, you know, 1601 is taking on a lot of different things now, a lot of requirement for transit. And so that's moving forward. It's also very expensive. Program distribution. You know, that's one of the things that that I've been waiting for, because what is holding up, this is holding up the distribution of MMOF funding. And so as soon as this is approved, we can start thinking about awarding funds. Right now, I requested everybody start thinking about what they might want to put in for an MMOF grant request. The grant money is not very large, but we've still got a number of different things. We got, let's see, 22 money, 23 money, 24 money, and 25 money to all think about. You put that together and still not a lot of money, but at least we got something that we as TPRs and MPOs can have our people decide on. And that's one of the big things that the TPRs and the MPOs have been able to do over the last 3-4 years. And so we'll have to see what's going on with the commission. I think they're going to approve things this month. And so I'll keep you updated on that as we go along. Hinsdale County. Yeah, I don't know if everybody knows where Hinsdale County is, but you know, the population of Hinsdale County is about 800 and some people for the whole county. But one of the things they have is they have a lot of the mountains and a lot of mountain trails and a lot of the mining that used to go on. And so there's a lot of ATV activity. And one of the things, they have a couple of trails that they like to connect, but the only way to connect with them is on one of the Colorado highways, 149. And so they had to get special permission to allow the ATVs to come down on one trail and go on to the other trail on 149. And the commission had a lot of discussion about that. The thing of it is this has been going on for a number of years now, and each year they've gotten approval, and everything is going on fairly safe. And so what they need to do is continue with that, and the commission approved the request to allow people who drive ATVs and using that trail to come down from one and onto the other using 149. So that's been approved. They were very happy with that, by the way, and because I'll talk about that later. There was a audit committee met, talked about a number of different things, and then they had their regular meeting, and everything on their regular meetings, all the resolutions and things were approved. So any comments or questions? You know, their meetings are also broadcast, and so that if you want to see or attend their meetings, I recommend doing that. That's it. The meetings are somewhat interesting. It's nice to hear what some of the commissioners have been doing and the interest they have in us. So as a member of STAC and all the other members, they really look to us to give them information of what's going on around the state in terms of activities and projects and that kind of thing. And so if there's no other questions or anything, I think we'll move on to do just that. So, Dr. Cog. Dr. Cog, Ron.
Sorry, Bench. Commissioner Odoricio, are you on?
I thought he was.
Yes, I am.
There
Sorry.
he is. What's going on in your area?
Well, we're working through some of our we're working through all of our plans. We're doing the housing needs assessment. We're working through we just finished up some of our pollution reduction program. Ron, what's the name of the report?
Yes, the carbon pollution reduction grant.
Yep. Carbon pollution reduction grant. We're working through a lot of the challenges that we're having, of course, is working with the state to make sure that some of the proposals that they have as they impact us are addressed to allow us as much flexibility as possible and promote collaboration among all of our members. In addition to that, we're beginning the rest of our tip process. Ron, what other updates can I provide? I'm sorry, I was cut off guard on that one.
That's quite all right. I'll highlight a couple. We're in the midst of processing a few amendments to the regional transportation plan. One of those includes one of the projects that Vince mentioned, the proposed new interchange on I-76 at Weld County Road 8, pending approval of the 1601 permit from the state. We'll be having public hearings in April, and the board will consider adoption of those amendments in May. We also are in the process of transmitting to CDOT our annual greenhouse gas mitigation action plan report. That's required because we adopted a mitigation action plan when we did our regional transportation plan to comply with the state greenhouse gas rule.
Okay, Central Front Range.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dick Elsner, Central Front Range. We're in the process of redoing our bylaws or coming up with a good set of bylaws. Our next meeting will be in April, where we go through what we're trying to come up with. We're one of those areas where we've got an MPO in the middle of the TPR, so we're trying to work with them to get the idea that we don't want the TPR and the MPO to have representatives from the same county. It's the same as in some other areas, and we've always been informal in that. We've never had a problem, but we're going to try to do something about that. Other than that, it's snowing lightly. It's still way too early to start on any construction, so hopefully we'll get more snow, but then it's going to warm up and we can get some work done. Thank you.
Okay. Grand Valley.
All right. So I guess the first one is we're in the procurement process for our 2050 regional transportation plan. So hope to move forward pretty quickly with that. And then we're also deep into our Safe Streets and Roads for All action plan, safety action plan. Yesterday we had a great workshop with a lot of great representation from law enforcement, local hospitals, the health department, CDOT, and our local partners. So that went really well, and we got a lot of great feedback on our plan. And then we're also reviewing the 90% design for our maintenance facility, our transit fleet maintenance facility, hoping to break ground on that in May with our CMGC contractor, and just eagerly waiting our contract from CDOT so that doesn't complicate the start of construction. We did have a board meeting last week, and our board adopted our 2020 to 2024 safety performance measures. They also approved a letter in response to the rulemaking on 2 CCR 601-22. That was that TPR study, I guess the result of that TPR study, as well as approved a comment letter on Senate Bill 24-036, the Vulnerable Road User Protection Enterprise, and then also approved a letter to support the Colorado West RAISE application, which is funding for Glenwood Canyon, resiliency funding for kind of the Glenwood area. So yeah, we've had a really busy month. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's the Gunnison Valley. Well, somebody mentioned the fact that it's too early for construction to happen. Well, our Highway 50 Little Blue Creek Canyon is trying to decide when they're going to start up again in the next couple of weeks. And supposedly they're supposed to finish sometime this year. And the thing of it is, I get two different reports. One says they're going to finish in June, and the other says they'll finish in August. So sometime this summer, we hope that the Highway 50 construction project, which has been going on for 3 years now, will get completed. And there won't be any more delays in moving vehicles on that highway. One of the other things that's happening is Gunnison Valley is in the process of doing county hearings with Region 3. And Region 3 began its first county hearing yesterday, and that is with Hinsdale County. And that's why I was able to say that they're very thankful for the commission and their approval of their HOV permission to use 149. There's a number of different projects that are getting finished this summer. One of them is on Highway 550 in Ouray County, and hopefully that'll get taken care of. Now, some of the other projects, Highway 90. Nobody knows about Highway 90 because Highway 90 goes west out of Montrose, but they're going to be doing some work on that, tentatively doing a repave, and so we'll see how that goes. And part of the Highway 90 goes through a lot of national forests and stuff like that, and so it's good on one end and good on the other end, but it's the middle that has a problem. And so they're going to try and do some of that, and that's out of Region 3. A number of different things. I just had a little communication with Mike Snow, and he's going to be sending out the dollar amounts or funding amounts that are tentatively up for approval for each of us and for MMOF. And so you should be able to look for that. We've got some snow, but it's not snowing now, and it really hasn't snowed in Gunnison very well. Ski area had enough snow to get through their season, but not as much as they could have. And, we always have that problem with water. And so hopefully we'll get some more snow, and hopefully Blue Mesa will fill up a little more. Roger, do you have some more things to say?
Oh, not much. We did get 14 inches of snow right here in Montrose on Sunday morning. So we had a very big event that happened. And so, yeah, it was much welcomed, and it's already gone. it's amazing how fast it dissipated once the sun come out. So yeah, it was a good event, and we definitely needed the moisture. The farmers and ranchers here are excited about getting their crops in the field, and this will slow them down a little bit because it's going to be pretty muddy for a few days. So other than that, I don't have a whole lot more to report. It's the same stuff here in Montrose County. Highway 90 goes about 5-6 miles west of Montrose, and then it stops and turns into a county road, and it goes over the mountain. It's a shortcut to Nucla. And then we catch it again outside of Natarita, and it goes all the way to the Utah state line. So it's kind of a unique little road, and it does get a lot of volume. So a lot of citizens drive it on this side, and a lot of tourists from the Moab area coming into the west end of Montrose County use it on the other end. So we're grateful that CDOT is working on those. They do need some help, and we are always grateful when they put down asphalt. So that's all I have. Thank you, and good morning, everyone.
Thanks. Intermountain.
Thank you, Vince. Brian Pettit. Yeah, I'd like to, as I mentioned before, we had hired a mobility manager in coordination with Northwest COG. And she's on today. I'd like to introduce Dana Wood. If she could pop on and say hi to the group, I would appreciate that. Dana?
Thanks, Brian. Hey, everybody. I'm Dana. I live over in Garfield County in Silt, and I'm excited to be a part of the IMTPR group. We have a lot of things going on. Brian, I don't know if you want to share updates or if you want me to, you can go ahead.
Okay. Thanks, Dana. Appreciate you being here. I will just say in April, we have a retreat plan to go over our governing documents and make sure that we have agreement on them and get them passed, hopefully. Secondly, we want to build some relationships through this effort of possibly splitting the Intermountain TPR. Some feelings may have been hurt, and we want to build those relationships so we have a solid team moving forward and establish some expectations on how we're going to work together. We've had some turnover in representation there, so we're going to educate people up so they understand the purpose of the TPR and frankly STAC and the rest of the CDOT process. Moving forward, as I've said previously, for now, we're moving forward as one TPR until we find out midsummer what the Transportation Commission's final decision is. And regardless of that, if we do happen to split up, I think these governing documents that we will approve will be also just brought forward with the two TPRs. So that boundary has been set if there is a split, and that's what the Transportation Commission will be voting on. Beyond that, speaking of snow, we're about at 100% in the Colorado River Basin for snowpack, and right now we're expecting a very successful spring break for all the ski resorts. So that's where we are in the Intermountain area. Thanks, Vince.
You're welcome. I noticed in the news, spring break in Miami Beach is being turned away. They say, don't come. And because they've had so many problems in the past. So spring break is an interesting thing. And I know it brings a lot of people to all the ski resorts. So hopefully everything goes well for everybody.
Thank you.
Let's see, North Front Range.
Hello, everyone. Johnny Olson. What a great March day. It's my birthday, so I just wanted to say that to everybody before I started. You don't have to sing me happy birthday.
No, but we can say happy birthday to Johnny because we know Johnny from a long time.
29 years old today.
Oh, good.
So at our February 1st meeting, we approved our Articles of Association due to the changes in the TPR boundary study recommendations. So we're caught up to speed with that. Also at the meeting, we reaffirmed the Front Range Passenger Rail District Directors, which is going to be me and Will Karspeck. We also reaffirmed our transport program projects and also our target safety performance measures. One of the things that we did different this year is instead of taking the state's targets, we actually created a regional based target system for the North Front Range. The reason why we did that is we'd like to know how we're doing in our region, but yet also compare it to the state level. So we think we can focus our safety dollars better if we know what we're regionally needing to do that. to work with CDOT to help get that done. So that was the first time ever we've done that. Also, exciting news, you're going to be surprised, but we're standing up an MPO on US 34, and our consultant was in town. It's called STEER, and they're in town doing a lot of investigations and driving the corridor. I think today is a couple-hour tour on the corridor, but really getting a lot of information on how we can build that US 34 TMO and then help with CDOT and drive that initiative of how we're going to move a better mobility plan along that corridor. So working with all the chambers, working with everybody. I'm excited. It's the first one up here, so it could be a great thing for us. And if nobody in this group has driven I-25 from State Highway 56 to Colorado 14, I would recommend you do it and see the wonderful work that Region 4 and the contractors did up there. The managed lanes are open. The safety is so much better. The congestion relief, it's just a wonderful project, and Region 4 did a great job. So I want to thank Region 4.
Thanks, Johnny. Okay, Northwest.
We have not had a meeting since our last STAC meeting. You know, I will do a small amount of gloating and then pass it on to Brian. Steamboat, of course, has the most snow in the whole state of Colorado. We surpassed 300 inches. And go ahead, Brian.
That was quicker than I was expecting, Heather. Well, Winter Park is not that far off. We're at 113% of annual snow average, so we're having a great year here as well. Yeah, big news on our side of Grand County is just the continued pass closures and the issues with that on Berthoud Pass. So we are meeting with CDOT on March 18th and hope to get some resolution on how to manage the snow.
I would also say that there is initial talks within our region for the Mountain Rail Coalition to get formed. I am not a part of that, so I don't really know much. Neither is Brian, from what we understand from each other yesterday. But there is conversation being had to continue forward with the Mountain Rail Coalition up here. So when we know, we'll let you know.
Okay, let's see, Pikes Peak.
Okay, yes. So I think the big news is the Airport Empowers Interchange project is going out for advertisement this week on Thursday the 7th, and CDOT's plan is to open bids on April the 4th. This is a huge project for our military in our region. And next week we are starting to consider, I think we're maybe even approving our bylaws that will address the problem that Commissioner Elsner brought up with making sure that we don't have two representatives from El Paso County, one from the MPO and one from the TPR. And so that should at least start to clear that up. And then we continue to have the most awesome update from Shane Ferguson and John Hall from CDOT every month, where they send us 3 slides, and it usually leads to a 35-minute discussion of, well, what about the right turn lane on, you know, Highway 35 or whatever, coming out of this intersection. And everybody in our region, all the elected officials are really, really updated on what is going on, and we really appreciate that. So we're having great work down here. Also the MAMSIP project and continued construction between Fillmore and Garden of the Gods on I-25. So we just know if you're coming through, you got a slow down point in Colorado Springs for just a bit, but it will be done faster than we think. So thank you.
You're welcome. So I was just looking at some of the legislative things that came out in the report for this month. And, you know, there are a couple of railroad type of bills, House Bill 1012, Front Range Passenger Rail District Efficiency. And so it looks at changing some of the operation things for the Front Range Passenger Rail. And there's also a railroad safety requirements bill 1030. So, you know, if you're interested in what's going on with some of that kind of stuff, you need to look at some of those bills. So anyway, moving forward, Pueblo.
Thanks for not forgetting us. So I'm teasing you. So our
That's
updates
all right.
are the county, they released their bids. Actually, the bids came in for the Medal of Honor Boulevard, and that is the boulevard that is an extension of Joe Martinez and Pueblo West that will connect to the city of Pueblo, but it's now called Medal of Honor. They're hoping to get an award by April or May. The county also applied for the RAISE 2024, which is a great project. Hopefully we get it. Provides some multimodal connectivity to our bicycle routes and also includes some 3 new transit routes or 3 new transit stops. We're also making really great headway with several different community partners for our bike month in June. And our travel demand model should be complete by April and have our GHG report also complete by the end of April. Our board met last week and they approved to add 3 new projects from our MMOF and carbon reduction call for projects. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. San Luis Valley.
Yeah, good morning again. So we had our first 2024 meeting on February 22nd. We had our standard CDOT reports and updates. We had our elections where myself was selected as chair and Rio Grande County Commissioner Gene Glover will be the vice chair. At that meeting, there was a lot of thank yous for Keith Baker having the leadership role over the last couple of years, and he did a great job at that. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 23rd, and it's still wintertime here, but with the wind hot on the heels of spring, it's coming on fast.
Okay, South Central.
Good morning, Brian Blasey with South Central COG. So the I-25 bridge replacement in Walsenburg is progressing, and paving is starting from milepost 64 to milepost 77 on I-25. Commissioner Galusha testified at the Transportation Commission hearing yesterday against combining South Central and Southeast TPRs. And also, Commissioner Galusha wanted me to report a concern regarding demolition material being disposed of from project sites. Recently, there was some concrete with rebar placed in a waterway, which could cause major problems in the future.
Okay, Southeast.
Good morning. We're working on our bylaws review and adoption, hopefully to happen in April. We're working on a website to publish minutes, agendas, be more transparent with and more public participation. We're still very concerned with the change of the TPRs between South Central and Southeast. Stephanie testified on that yesterday. Huge concern of ours. As for projects, Lamar's Main Street project is completed, and our next TPR meeting is in April. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't know if everybody remembers that when the report came out, there were 2 boundary changes that were suggested. One was to split Intermountain into 2 TPRs, and also then to consolidate South Central and Southeast into 1 TPR. The problem is you can't do one without the other, because the law says that you have to have these many TPRs, and if you split one into 2, that adds another one. If you consolidate, that makes one that makes the number less. And so if you're going to do one, you got to do the other or have some other kind of arrangement worked out. But so we'll see what the commission comes up with. Okay, Upper Front Range.
Thanks, Vince. Kevin Ross here. Our next meeting is actually scheduled for this afternoon. We got a lot of things on the agenda. Really nothing to report from last couple months as we meet quarterly. However, you brought it up earlier, Vince, in the TC discussion. You know, we're actively working on that 1601 application there at I-76 and Weld County Road 8. And so that's a big project for us, and hoping to be successful with that. So that's about all I have to report, Vince.
Thanks. Okay, Southern Ute. Okay, Mountain Ute.
Yes, what the tribe wants to discuss a little bit is that we are continuing to work with CDOT on some right-of-ways on our highways here, on Highway 491, 160, and State Highway 41. There's some fencing issues that we need to work on, and some brush and high weeds that are on the shoulders. So hopefully we can get with them. Actually, we are going to meet with them at the end of this month with CDOT, and so we'll probably go over those things, and we hopefully get an agreement and set up a schedule to get a few things done on our right of ways here. And then I'm not sure if any of you all heard, but there was a bus accident here on our highway at 160. It's a very dangerous intersection right near our travel center. And yesterday morning, a bus was struck by a pickup truck, and nothing super serious. There was kids that were sent to the hospital, and what I've heard so far is one had a fracture on the arm, and another had a swollen nose from hitting the seats. Anyway, the main thing, I guess, we have a lot of concerned parents and community members, I guess. So that's, it's understandable. But there were 35 kids in that bus, and so I guess the issue is that we continue to work with CDOT, and hopefully, through the regulations and things that kind of hinder any kind of changes for that intersection, we are hoping that we can figure out a solution for this intersection. There's no stoplight or anything that really slows the people down that drive through that corridor. But there's been multiple accidents and a couple of deaths right there, and it seems like the accidents are becoming more frequent. So I guess that's kind of what we're hoping to convey and figure out some kind of solution for that intersection. I think that's one of our primary concerns right now at this point in time. So other than that, that's kind of what we're focusing on, and hopefully we can get some things resolved. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, FHWA.
Morning,
Gary
everyone.
Beatty with Houston.
Bill Haas here. Let me get my camera. So I don't believe John Cater's on.
So morning, Bill.
Good morning. So just one quick thing. I think we may have talked about this previous meetings, but wanted to just give a reminder. There will be a greenhouse gas workshop held at CDOT headquarters next week. That's being offered by FHWA under the Everyday Counts Round 7 initiative that included kind of adding greenhouse gas to the planning process, or addressing greenhouse gas in the planning process. So wanted to thank CDOT for hosting that. This is a national workshop that generally all of the states that have agreed to participate in this Everyday Counts initiative will be in attendance. And I believe Dr. Cog is represented to provide a presentation on the efforts that, as well as CDOT, that we've been working on under state legislation. So just want to give an update on that. That's all I have.
Thanks. So, Eastern TPR.
Yeah, Gary Beatty here. We just had our TPR meeting on Monday, and we adopted our new revised bylaws. Should meet all the requirements that are recommended. We were updated on upcoming projects. We have some projects on I-76 and an important one on I-70 from the Kansas line to Burlington, and then Burlington to Bethune, to address deteriorated pavement, and that is very looked forward to, as a lot of complaints have been on that section of highway, as it's been very rough for a long time. One issue I've heard over the last month has been the contract approvals and reimbursements for transit agencies. There seems to be a very large backlog, some up to 2 years delayed on different contracts. And I know we've had an issue with staffing in the contract review department. But it's something we need to have CDOT figure out how to address, whether it be using consultants that have contracts to help address getting that backlog moved forward so people can buy the equipment or get the equipment that's already been purchased. And also one for my district specifically is one for East Central Council of Governments. They have a contract that they haven't been reimbursed on for 7 months on the expenses that provide service to developmentally disabled people in the area, because apparently CDOT now is requiring or not allowing in-kind match that the federal grant does allow. So I would ask that we try to figure out how to get those things resolved in a much more timely manner for our transit agencies, so they can continue to provide the service that they've been doing for many years. Then another one that just came up yesterday, we had a railroad closure on Highway 86 at I-70, which is the road that goes from I-70 to Kiowa into Elbert County. And I understand CDOT did not have notice of the closure much prior to it, but it's been a full day closure, and it's been now extended through today, and it may be extended further if the weather delays asphalt laying. And we understand CDOT's frustration also, where the railroads don't have to give notice. But I encourage the rail department and freight to try to get better communication with railroads, to have them notify CDOT when they're going to close a state highway in advance, so we can let the public know. And then we also are having issues with the IT department not putting it on the co-trips as a closure, because it's not a CDOT project. We need to figure out a way to get these sorts of projects onto that map system, so people are aware of it as they're traveling across the state and can plan, since the detours are very long for that highway, to have a paved route detour. So I don't know if there's anybody that could address that sometime in the meeting on how to get those sorts of projects put onto the co-trip system, so that people are aware of those closures. Otherwise, I traveled to Mancos last weekend for state regional basketball from Lyman, and headed up to Longmont today to watch my son play in the state tournament. So if anybody wants to support my son for a vote on the 9 News Shot of the Week, go to the 9 News Preps and you can vote for my son on that. So thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Southwest TPR.
Hi, we are currently updating our bylaws, and we did receive the grant for the road expansion from Elmore's Corner to Bayfield. So that project is currently underway. That's all I got.
Okay, great. Let's see here. FTA.
The only update I have is recently, we just released on February 29th, the FY 24 partial year apportionments. So if you want to know what those apportionments are, we have, multiple funding summary tables online, and I can drop the link in the chat for everyone.
Very good. Thanks, Julia. Have I missed anybody else? Anybody have any questions on various projects? Okay, we'll move on to legislative report. Emily.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. We are still plugging away over at the Capitol. It was a very long day yesterday. There was a lot of different transportation legislation that was up. So yesterday we gave testimony in 3 different committees. So up in Senate, Transportation and Energy Committee, they heard our commercial motor vehicle safety bill. So our Keith, our chief engineer, John, our director of maintenance, our chief of maintenance and operations, and myself and Craig Hurst from the Freight and Mobility branch were all present to speak to the bill and our support of the bill. It did end up passing 5-2, which was a great outcome in that committee. There were a few different amendments. So one amendment that passed scaled back the geographic location of where chains would be required to be carried a little bit further. So the way that the bill was currently, or was written as of yesterday, was that it was I-25 and west. We are now doing Morrison and west, so just US routes, and I-70. I think there are some more amendments to come to kind of add some precision to what that looks like, because of course it's a little tricky to know if you're east or west of Morrison, if you're south. So that'll come in the next committee, but I think that was a really good change and is helping us capture the right folks that we want to in that legislation. The left lane portion of that bill was also scaled back a little bit. So the original version of the bill had a left lane restriction from Morrison to Glenwood Canyon for commercial motor vehicles, except to pass a vehicle going below the speed limit. That was scaled back to be specific to 4 high danger zones on I-70 where we see the most crashes. So Georgetown Hill, Glenwood Canyon, Eisenhower Tunnel Grade, and Vail Pass. And so those 4 zones we're now planning to codify those in statute as no pass zones, where CMVs over 16,000 pounds could not pass at all unless in the event of an emergency. So they'd have to remain in the right lane at all times. So I think that was a good change, because those no pass zones are pretty critical for our I-70 corridor. And then we do already have an existing left lane law for all vehicles. So if you're on I-70 going anytime you're going over 65 miles an hour, you're not allowed to be in the left lane except to pass. So I think having these no pass zones was a good cleanup to the bill. Beyond that, transit-oriented housing and transit-oriented communities was also heard in the House Transportation, Housing and Local Government Committee yesterday. That had about 40 to 60 people testifying in support or opposition or amend of that bill. It did end up passing the Transportation Committee. And then after that, a bill was heard that is in relation to our Division of Aeronautics. So that's HB 24-1235, Reduce Aviation Impacts on Communities. That ended up having 140 people testify on that bill. with a wide range of different opinions of the legislation. We initially had some concerns with the legislation and the way that it was written. The sponsors did bring a strike below, which means that the entire bill was struck, and then they brought a new version of the bill, which we worked on to get some amendments in. And so we were able to get to a support position on that bill, and are feeling a lot more comfortable with the original concerns we had around preemption and just general cost of the different provisions that were being tasked for the Division of Aeronautics. So that was yesterday. Beyond that, our distracted driving bill should be up in appropriations tomorrow, hopefully in Senate appropriations. It did pass the Senate Transportation and Energy Committee, so we're feeling good about that one. We're continuing to have conversations about broadband deployment in CDOT right-of-way. We haven't heard too much on what else is coming on SB 2491. That still has been paused and not calendared for a new committee date. But we are continuing to talk with members of the Joint Technology Committee about if there are any compromises or things we want to put into statute around right-of-way permits for broadband. Beyond that, there's about 60 bills we're tracking in total, but a lot of those are just kind of small ones that maybe, we need a small exemption, or it's a license plate bill. But if there are any questions about specific bills, I'd be happy to dive into those.
Any questions for Emily? Thanks for sending that monthly report out. That was very helpful.
Absolutely.
Jamie.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well and enjoying this March. Happy birthday, Johnny Olson. I'm also gonna shell. I'm turning 40 next week. Very excited about that. I have just a couple of updates. There's actually been some pretty major federal legislation that passed the House yesterday. So we've finally gotten our budget minibus, which gets us through the end of the fiscal 2024 fiscal year, so September 30th, which is fantastic. We can stop having these 1 week, 1 month continuing resolutions. For the most part, funding holds about the same. There's little tweaks here and there, but it's basically, there's no huge surprises. So they're referring to it as a minibus because there are 3 appropriations bills included in this tranche. We have the military construction, VA, and related agencies appropriations bill, the agricultural, rural development, food and drug administration and related agencies, and then the transportation, housing, urban development, and related agencies appropriations bills. All told, those handle the Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Department of Transportation, Veterans Affairs, Interior Department, Commerce Department, Justice Department, and several agencies. Like I said, nothing too out of the ordinary, just very happy to have a bill that takes us through the end of the fiscal year. This is the first tranche. It's about $460 billion, give or take a couple billion, And then the second tranche to avert a different government shutdown is due by March 22nd. And that includes things like Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense. And so that one's going to be much more contentious. So it is on the floor of the Senate right this moment. It passed the House yesterday. It's on the floor of the Senate today. And then conceivably could be signed by the president today, and more likely tomorrow. Just in case anyone is bored tonight, the State of the Union is this evening at 7 p.m. So those are some federal updates. In my typical fun update, wanted to let everyone know that Alexander Graham Bell patented the telephone in 1876, which was 146 years ago. So can you imagine what he would think after patenting his telephone, that we're all talking face to face across the state, hundreds, if not thousands of combined miles. I just think that's pretty cool. So happy Alexander Graham Bell Day. It is also National Name Tag Day, National Ben, Sharon, Carol, or Teresa Day. We don't have any of those, unfortunately, on the call. National Cereal Day, and most importantly, everyone, it is National Crown Roast of Pork Day, because we needed a day for that. So, happy name tag day, everybody. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, and boundary study. I'm so sorry. The boundary study, our second hearing is March 11th at 6 p.m. I will put the information for registration in the group chat. And if you have any questions, you can email me or call me on my telephone. And we will celebrate Alexander Graham Bell's achievement.
Questions for Jamie?
I have one. Oh, I'm sorry. I feel a little ignorant, but boundary study.
The 1101.
Okay,
from
just
last
making
year.
sure that that was the one you were talking
But you
about.
don't have those two words just burned on your brain like I do?
No, I'm trying to forget them all.
Well, I'm happy for you. Yes, we're headed to the home stretch. We have our last hearing. We had our first hearing yesterday. We have our last hearing on Monday. And then we will start the process of taking it to the Transportation Commission for them to vote in the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, since we're running ahead of time, I think we'll take the next item, which is the fiscal year 25 budget. Jeff.
All right. Let's see. Good morning. Let's see here. Hang on just a second. I guess, Aaron, are you pulling up the slides or do I need to pull those up? I can probably do either.
Those are coming up here in just a second.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, Aaron's getting those moving. I'll get us started. So, we are wrapping up the budget development cycle for fiscal year 25. So that's obviously the state fiscal year beginning on July 1. So to kind of back up a little bit, we start the budget development process in the fall of each year. We actually had our first workshop on the fiscal year 25 budget back in September. We came to STAC. I can't remember if it was October, November, December, but somewhere in there we came to STAC. And reviewed the budget in draft form at that point in the cycle. The commission approved the budget for fiscal year 25 in draft form in November so that we could submit it to the Office of State Planning and Budget for a deadline in December. We come back again then after that initial draft has been submitted and make final changes, including updating our forecast of revenues. So that's what we've done the last couple of months. We've come back, we've updated our revenue forecast, we've made some of the final changes to the budget, and we will be bringing the budget to the commission to request their approval at their meeting in about 2 weeks. We do that ahead of a deadline to resubmit the budget by April, and then hopefully the governor approves our budget before the start of the fiscal year on July 1. So ahead of that final workshop with the commission and ahead of the commission request for the commission to approve the budget, I wanted to take some time today to give STAC an update and an overview presentation on what the fiscal year 25 budget is looking like. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So I'll walk through, I'll start by walking through sort of sources and uses, looking at high level, looking at what our revenue picture looks like for fiscal year 25 and how those revenues are allocated in this fiscal year 25 budget allocation plan. Then I'll talk a little bit about kind of the core components of the budget allocation plan, which includes our narrative budget, a series of appendices, the revenue allocation plan, and our spending plan. And then we'll wrap up with just some general information on sort of where we're at timeline in terms of timeline and next steps. So let's go ahead to the next slide. So in fiscal year 25, our revenues are projected to total about $2,033,000,000. This slide essentially breaks down those revenues according to the primary sources. So about 42% of our revenues in fiscal year 25 are coming from our federal programs, primarily through FHWA and FTA. That is funded by the 18.4 cent per gallon federal gas tax, as well as federal general fund contributions. A little less than a third of our fiscal year 25 revenue comes through the Highway Users Tax Fund. That is composed at the state level of the state fuel taxes and fees, vehicle registrations, our faster fees, and the retail delivery fee that was imposed under Senate Bill 260 a few years ago. About 8% of our revenues in fiscal year 25 flow through the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise. Those revenues coming through the Faster Bridge Safety Surcharge, as well as some new fees, Bridge Impact Fee and Retail Delivery Fee, also put in place under Senate Bill 260. Moving over to the right-hand side of your slide, about 8% in fiscal year 25 comes in the form of a variety of other state funds. That includes both revenues from our aviation fuel tax. It also includes the revenues flowing through the other CDOT enterprises, the Clean Transit Enterprise, the Non-Attainment Enterprise, and the Clean Fuels Enterprise. Sorry, I lost where I was here. Legislative initiatives, about 5% of our revenues in fiscal year 25. The largest portion of that is a general fund transfer that was put in place under Senate Bill 260, and that begins flowing to CDOT in fiscal year 25. Finally, about 5% flows through the Colorado Transportation Investment Office, or HPTE, with the majority of that revenue being collections of toll revenue. So let's go on to the next slide. So this slide basically shows how that revenue in fiscal year 25 is allocated across the various CDOT budget programs. Our budget is organized around 7 budget categories. This is rolled up a little bit higher. I think we've got 6 of them here. But about 41% or 827 million of that fiscal year 25 revenue is allocated to our capital construction program. That includes our core asset management programs like surface treatment, bridge, tunnels, etc. But it also includes our 10-year plan projects. About a quarter of our revenue in fiscal year 25 is allocated to our maintenance and operations programs, just designed to keep the roads open and operating. The biggest portion of that, about 300 million, is in our maintenance program, our MLOS program or maintenance program. Other programs included in the maintenance and operations category include things like our real-time traffic operations program, our ITS program, and our strategic safety program. About 17% of fiscal year 25 revenues will ultimately be passed through CDOT to locals. That includes the funds passed through by our aeronautics programs to airports across the state. Funds passed through the Division of Transit and Rail to local transit agencies. Funds passed through to the MPOs and a variety of CDOT grant programs, such as the Revitalizing Main Streets program. That also includes the MMOF funds that you're all very familiar with in the TPRs. Moving back over to the left, about 2.5% of our fiscal year 25 funds are going to our multimodal services. That includes, most notably, probably our Bustang service, but it also includes a variety of mobility-focused programs administered by the Office of Innovative Mobility, including our EV programs and a variety of innovative mobility programs. And then just wrapping up on this slide, I'm noticing I got a question. I'll get to that in just a minute. Last 2 categories, a little under 7% goes to essentially the agency operations, the administration and operations of the department. That includes things such as our common policy paid to for IT services, for Attorney General services. Also includes just the general administrative costs of the department. And then finally, about 7% of our budget goes to debt service, contingency, and a variety of other small programs. So I'm going to pause right here because I see I did have at least one hand up. So I want to see if there was if we had a question from John Leosatos. And then if there's any other questions to this point, happy to take those. Otherwise, I'll continue on and take questions at the end.
John, did you have a question?
No, sir, he answered it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey.
All right. So our budget, this is kind of a breakdown of our budget document. Our budget is about 100 pages in total. It is available at the link on the website here. It includes a number of key components. The one component that STAC and the TC are probably most familiar with seeing is that first appendix, the revenue allocation plan. Probably next to that, the next thing they're probably most familiar with is our spending plan. I'll touch a little bit more on each of those in the next two slides. But in addition to those two items, we have a number of other reports in the budget that include additional details on, for example, what makes up our total construction budget, what makes up our indirect and construction engineering budget. We have a personnel report outlining department staffing. We also have a 10-year plan report that is a new element that was added to the fiscal year 25 budget as a result of a requirement coming out of a bill that passed last legislative session. I'll also note that if you're interested in learning more about the various CDOT revenue sources and programs, that document has a lot of detail on all of those. You can read through a narrative on each of the revenue sources and each of the CDOT funding programs. Let's go on to the next slide. So this is the revenue allocation plan, or as we sometimes refer to it, the one sheet budget, although it is no longer one sheet. It has grown in size over the last few years as we've added new programs and new revenue sources. This is, again, probably the component of the budget that most folks are familiar with. It is essentially looking at this ties back to the pie charts we looked at. It is basically the tool by which the Transportation Commission and the department allocate the new revenue for the upcoming fiscal year. So this is looking at essentially our new revenue that is anticipated in fiscal year 25, and it is allocating those that fiscal year 25 to the various CDOT programs. This revenue allocation plan is balanced using our most recent forecast. That's our forecast from December of 2025. I'll note I'm not going to go into detail about sort of how we arrive at the allocations here, but in general, the revenue allocation plan is developed with our flexible programs set at prior year levels. Programs with dedicated revenue sources are set based on a forecast for those revenue sources. And then our asset management programs are funded according to a previously approved asset management planning level. So DTD actually helps us set our target asset management planning levels a few years in advance, and then we try to reflect those in the budget, provided that funds are available. So as I noted, in 25, we're looking at about a little over $2 billion in revenues. About 1.73 billion of that is in CDOT programs, and about 300 million in the various CDOT enterprises. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So the second primary component of the budget is the spending plan. Again, the revenue allocation plan is where the commission allocates revenue. The spending plan provides a picture of the cumulative outcome of those revenue allocation decisions. So the spending plan shows anticipated expenditures for the fiscal year, utilizing both current year revenues, so the new revenue coming in the door, as well as our existing fund balances. In fiscal year 25, we anticipate expenditures of nearly $2.5 billion, with about $2.15 billion of that with CDOT and roughly $300 million with the enterprises. You'll note that the expenditures in fiscal year 25 of roughly $2.5 billion exceed the fiscal year 25 revenues in our revenue allocation plan by more than $400 million. That reflects us drawing down our existing fund balances as we continue to spend down the one-time legislative funding we've received over the last several years, including stimulus funds provided by Senate Bill 267 and Senate Bill 260 primarily. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a little bit more detailed breakdown of funding for the 10-year plan. 10-year plan allocations are a little bit of a rubber band allocation that sort of it contracts or expands as we develop the budget, depending on overall revenue and funding availability. So we build the budget, and we have to fund all of our required programs. We have to fund our asset management planning levels. We have to go through a process to consider decision items, which are those which are requests for increases to programs. And what ultimately is allocated to the 10-year plan is a little bit of a function of how much is left in some of our programs after we've funded all those required elements of the budget. There are 3 revenue programs that are already dedicated to the 10-year plan, meaning we don't allocate them anywhere else. We just direct them straight to the 10-year plan. That is the Federal Protect program, the Bridge Formula program, and the Carbon Reduction program. And then we add any remaining flexible state or federal revenues that we're able to after we've met all those other commitments in the budget. So in fiscal year 25, we will be allocating just a little bit less than $200 million to the 10-year plan. Just to sort of put this a little bit in context, this is not new dollars for new projects. If you remember, our current 10-year plan was focused on projects that we intended to fund between fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 26. We programmed to sort of a planning level of revenue. And each year we then allocate as much as we can to try to get closer to that total planning level. And so we're making good progress towards reaching that goal, but we're not there yet. So the full amount of the 10-year funds allocated in fiscal year 25 simply go to the current 4-year window of planned projects. All right, next slide. I think I'm wrapping up here. Let's see. So again, we're kind of at the end of the budget cycle here. We'll be going to the commission in about 2 weeks to ask for their approval of the budget allocation plan. And then we have to submit that to the governor's office of state planning and budget for approval and incorporation into the broader state budget in April. The other item that I'll note, referring to that first bullet there, the other thing we do in the version of the budget that will be going to the commission in March is we incorporate an estimate of our roll forwards. Our roll forwards are essentially the uncommitted balances from the prior fiscal year. So when we get to June 30, we will have a certain amount of funding in particularly in our capital construction and grant programs that has not been put into construction contracts or grants yet. That is essentially what makes up our roll forward. It is balances that we have not encumbered and committed to spend yet. So we estimate what we think is going to be left at the end of the fiscal year. And so when we bring that budget to the commission in March, we'll build in that estimate of that roll forward. That roll forward is sizable, primarily as a result of the continued balances that we're spending down from stimulus and Senate Bill 267, as well as our local programs, which is somewhat typical in the sense that we tend to have a bit of a lag with our local programs, and we carry balances forward year over year. But we'll incorporate that into the final version of the budget we bring to the commission for approval this month. So I will stop there. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Jeff?
I have a general question, Jeff. How are we looking for maintenance, and are we making it more of a priority?
Good question. So I will say maintenance, and I'm going to define, because different people sort of define what means maintenance differently, right? I mean, does it include, say, surface treatment and working on pavement projects through a surface treatment program? I'm going to talk about maintenance just in the context of MLOS, or our maintenance program areas. The orange trucks, the CDOT maintenance workers. We have endeavored over the last several years to really try to keep up with the budget on maintenance. I will say that historically, the maintenance program was sort of set in balance with all of our asset management programs, and for a number of years, it did not grow. The last several years, we have been increasing the maintenance program every year to largely keep up with increased labor costs. I think we have been able to keep up with growing labor costs. I think we've been less successful at keeping up with operating costs. One of the reasons that we've been less successful is just because we have limitations on the kind of money we can use for maintenance and operating. We cannot use federal funds for maintenance and operating. We are largely limited to using state HUTF. And I will say that state HUTF, between needing to match federal funds and to pay for the things that are not federally eligible, is stretched pretty thin. So we try every year to increase that budget. I think we're making some good progress. I'd love to see it go up a little bit more than it is already, but it is not without, as I mentioned, not without constraint. But in fiscal year 25, we are, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe we are at about 297 million, which will be an increase of about 13 million from fiscal year 24.
I guess I'm gonna ask again though, is that even close to enough? Or are we going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul like we seem to do every single year? And what, if anything, can be done to put pressure to make sure that we are actually taking care of the roads and increasing our levels of service and realizing that we are at a really low grade nationwide with our road systems?
So one point I'd like to make, Heather, I think when you're talking about things like pavement condition, we're really not talking about the MLOS budget. We're talking about the capital construction budget. So the dollars that we're putting in our asset management program and programs like surface treatment, and the dollars we're putting out in our 10-year plan to asset related projects. And so I think in both cases, again, I think we've been putting a lot of focus in the last few years and trying to catch up, especially on the pavement front. Last year, we put a significant amount of additional dollars towards pavement. If you remember, we put out, I'm gonna have to refresh my memory, but I think we had put out a large infusion through a budget amendment about a year ago towards pavement, and then we put in some additional funding to address some of the poor conditions coming out of the winter season last year. So I also think we've been making a big effort to focus more and more of the dollars in the 10-year plan towards asset projects. So I think that there has been a very focused effort on trying to drive more dollars towards pavement conditions specifically.
Johnny.
Jeff, thank you for your presentation. As always, I always love going over the CDOT budget. One of the questions I'm sort of going to tag on a little bit to Heather. I can't really, the budget's always hard to track, even when I was there. I would like to know how much over the last 10 years, what our budget has been. So what's the budget been every year for the last 10 years for asset management? I know I remember when I was there, the budget was 1.9 to 1.4 billion. We got a significant larger budget today. And I'd like to see if our asset programs, which not just encompasses surface treatment, but how much we've spent in our asset programs over the last 10 years and year to year, because I'd want to know if it's going up relatively at the same amount of that we're going up in increase in our budget, or is it laying more flat, or what is it looking like?
Sure. So, I think we have some of that information that we could put together. I think, Johnny, what you'll see is that, our core asset programs like surface treatment, I would say there probably hasn't been as much growth in those core programs, but where there has been a lot of growth is the additional funds above and beyond that we're directing to asset management and asset projects, either through the 10-year plan or through supplemental allocations of funding that we're bringing to that we're making through the commission. So an example of that is just this last budget cycle where we went to the commission and we decided to make a one-time $65 million infusion into the culverts program. That is, I think the culverts program on an annual basis is about $8 million a year. So a huge investment in culverts. So again,
Jeff, I don't want to stop you, but I think that's important for us to see. Like, so year infusion, you can show the year of the budget and then the infusion that the commission put in. So, because one of the things I think we all struggle with is we struggle with, we get a lot of comments and we talk to a lot of people about their roads, and people are saying roads and conditions, blah, blah, blah. We hear it all the time. And I know the pie's only so big, but having some data to be able to articulate that they're doing their best they can, but understanding the asset program with the infusions is going to be important.
Sure. No, I understood.
So Johnny, remember quite a while ago, 10 years or maybe a little more, how the CDOT budget was only about $1 billion, and now it's $2 billion. So there's been some amazing growth in a lot of different areas. Brian.
Hey there. Yeah, thanks again for your presentation. I'm curious about how our CDOT budget compares to other mountain states. And if it is quite a bit lower, obviously you kind of have to look at road mileage and everything like that. But I'm curious of how other states are finding more funding if they are funded more than Colorado.
Yeah, good question. I could get some information for you on that. You know, off the top of my head, I don't know that I could give you good comparables. I think UDOT is probably the most comparable neighboring DOT, and I think they are at a pretty similar level of overall funding. But we could pull some data of some comparable mountain states.
So, Jeff, we talked about Utah a number of years ago and the fact that they have a similar budget. However, they have a lot less roads.
Yep. And I think that's true. I mean, obviously looking at any DOT budget, there are a wide variety of factors you need to take into consideration. One is just sort of what's the extent of their system, how many lane miles. Also, what are they responsible for? You have DOTs that are responsible for ports. You have DOTs that are responsible for commuter rail. You have other DOTs that are focused on much more exclusively on a small state highway system. So definitely, there's a lot of variation in terms of what the scope of the DOT includes.
Good. Heather.
I guess I just wanted to follow up with the whole maintenance stuff, Jeff, and ask. I know last year we dipped into the budget for winter maintenance and had to rob Peter to pay Paul, like I was saying. And then we ran into a hurdle with pothole filling and everything else. And that didn't occur until the next fiscal year. So July, are we facing that same detriment this year where we're pothole filling again in July and people are going to start calling our constituents going, oh my gosh, the roads are crap and we can't get anybody out? And if that's the case, what are we doing for this budget to kind of alleviate this for the future?
So I can try to address part of that. And I think John Lorme joined. I might tag him in on part of that question. So I think last year, we have on an annual basis, we have a snow and ice reserve of about 12 million. It's essentially a contingency pot set aside to supplement our maintenance budget if and when needed. In big snow years, we draw that down. There are some years where we don't use all of it. There are some years where we exhaust it and we actually need more. I will say it is not typical that we exhaust the maintenance reserve and need more. Last year was a big snow season, and that's what happened last year. We exhausted the snow and ice reserve, and we had to go to the commission and say, hey, can we have some money from the regular contingency to further backfill snow and ice because it was such a big snow and ice year. You mentioned this too. We also had, because it was such a big snow and ice year, we had some really significant roadway impacts that we typically haven't seen at that level. That's why we also went to the commission and we said we want some additional funding to try to address the worst of those impacts. I think I'll let John Lorme maybe tag in here because I think John can probably do a better job than I can in terms of talking about where we're at with respect to snow and ice for the year and the remaining snow and ice reserve, as well as just roadway impacts and whether we think we're going to have a repeat of any of the significant pavement damage we had last year.
Jeff, I don't think I could articulate any better than what you already did. I'll tell you, last year, a couple of the highways that we had some pretty big issues on, like Berthoud Pass and outside the tunnel, those projects are bigger than maintenance. So by statute, a maintenance operation has to be 250,000 or less. So our ability to conduct major repairs on the highway is very limited. So we have to basically conduct a repair based within the limits of that 250K limit. Now, Berthoud, for instance, required a full repaving or a mill fill and then some serious depth repairs in certain areas and some drainage repairs. That quickly exceeds our ability to do that on the maintenance side of the house. The commission approved, our boss went to, asked us to get it fixed. We went to commission, or the EMT approved it. We went to commission. We asked for an additional 35 million last year in, I believe it was April and in June, to make all these major repairs, and then also to advance our maintenance forces with their chip sealing project. So we pretty much delivered almost all of those. Our state maintenance engineer, Jim Fox, is delivering the last couple of those this spring. But when it comes to those big projects, we're limited by two things: by the budget and then by the time of year. Can't pave Berthoud Pass except in the dead of summer, early fall, pretty much. So we're limited by time. Contractors, we have to go through the state procurement process and do all that. So those projects at that 25 million that the department delivered this year, they were almost done at light speed. We got the funding in June. We went out to add within a couple months. They were being delivered, and we got that done. And it was almost under emergency kind of situation. Now, when it comes to maintenance in our budget, like Jeff said, we have raised the maintenance budget considerable over the last 10 years. Each of the maintenance sections have enough funding to cover their personal services. Like every other DOT, and talking to my peers around the country, everything has gone up. Everything. A guardrail end treatment, as an example, just a couple years ago was a couple $1,000s, and now smart cushions and the more advanced guardrails that you have to use on the interstate for safety reasons and to be MASH compliant cost anywhere between 20 and 25K a piece. So we're really focused on keeping up with the personal services, because we have to pay salaries and we got to make sure that our winter operations program is there and present. And we are really doing the best we can when it comes to managing our priorities. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my brief coming up next. So, but when it comes to snow and ice budget, I think we're doing okay. We have about a $12 million pot that Jeff mentioned that we can tap into. We've already used about 4 million of that, and then we're going to ask for an additional pot of money, additional draw in a couple weeks here once payroll runs for last month. So I think we'll be pretty good. And I don't think we robbed Peter to pay Paul. I think all that money is supposed to go to the highways. It's just used in different departments throughout the or different divisions throughout the department. So every cent dedicated for CDOT is going to something for CDOT. In the long run, it benefits everybody. So I know it's a long-winded answer, and I hope that helped.
So are you going to be able to fill potholes before fiscal year 24?
You bet. I will promise you this, Heather. We will always fill potholes. And if it's bigger than a pothole and it requires emergency repair, then I go to the chief engineer through the RTDs and we ask for that to get up to do that. But guardrail and potholes and regulatory signs and traffic signals, we will always have funding to do those. If I have to shift funding from litter pickup or from mowing, I will always put it towards whatever the greatest safety need is. And I have a priority, and I was going to talk about that here in a few minutes as well.
Okay, Ron.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Vince. And Jeff, thanks for the presentation and the information in the packet. Excuse me. I had a quick question. There was a statement in the memo about agency operations increasing about $9 million. And I understand where some of that's coming from, but there's also a statement about several initiatives that were approved by the executive management team for 24-25, and it references a decision item section, but I couldn't find that. Can you just briefly describe sort of what those are that are contributing to the part of the $9 million increase in agency operations?
Sure. And apologies, there might have been it sounds like there was maybe a reference in the memo that when we made some updates between February and March, got got dropped. So let me pull something up real quick to get you the numbers. But what you're referring to is, again, we approved the budget in draft form in November. We get to February or so and we make updates based on updated revenue forecasts. We also have a process where we look at decision items, which would be requests to increase funding to programs. And so we have some adjustments to get made before the budget gets finalized. One of the areas that we had adjustments in is in our agency operations and administration budget. The primary driver of those changes are two things. One, it's that we get final amounts from downtown. What I mean by that is our final common policy numbers. So how much we need to pay the AG's office, OIT, et cetera. The other driver of change there is that if we have any decision items that we consider to fund. So if you hang on just a second, Ron, I'm going to pull that up. So I've got that in front of me and I can give you the detail on what those were. Let's see here. So in the case of, oh, that's the wrong one, sorry. While I'm pulling that up, I'll tell you in the case of the $9 million increase on agency ops, the largest portion of that were not decision items. Those were the increases in common policy. And I think the biggest driver actually wasn't, I should restate that, wasn't common policy, it was COLA increase. So it was a 3% across the board increase in salaries. And I think that made up the largest component. All right, so here we go. Sorry for the delay. Let's see here. In terms of the decision items, we had 2 decision items that were approved by the Transportation Commission. Both of these were part of that agency operations increase. One of them, back to maintenance, a $2 million increase to our light fleet budget. So we made an increase to our light fleet budget. This was basically based on the increased costs that we were being charged by the Department of Personnel and Administration for our light duty fleet. So we increased the light fleet budget $2 million. We also increased our facilities budget by $1 million. That was based on an updated assessment of the annual operating costs associated with some new facilities that were management of which was taken over by our facilities program. So that increased by $1 million. There were 2 other decision items that were approved at the EMT level. That was a $500,000 increase to our COBRA program, which is our sort of a bottleneck reduction program that does very small inexpensive traffic flow improvements. And back to maintenance, a $500,000 increase to the maintenance and operations budget for related to some new building security contracts. So sorry, that took me a minute to get to the details, but that is the short answer there is the decision items, but the bigger source of the increase was common policy increases and salary increases.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, any other questions?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Steve.
So where is it? What are the policy increases, did you say? I'm trying to understand the detail of that.
Sure. So common policy, that's a little bit of it's a little bit of a wonky budget term. Common policy refers to essentially the pooled costs for state level programs that get allocated down to individual agencies. So the best examples of common policy costs are OIT. The state has a single, consolidated IT department, and then individual agencies are charged for IT services. Similarly, we're charged for services from the AG's office. So when I'm referring to common policy, what I'm referring to is the Joint Budget Committee goes through a figure setting process. It happens between the time we adopt the draft budget and then we finalize it. And in that figure setting process, they set these final common policy levels. And then we for lack of a better term, we get a bill that says, here's how much you're going to have to pay in fiscal year 25 for OIT or AG. And then we have to update the budget to reflect those common policies.
And who checks to make sure that those are reasonable increases?
I think probably the best answer is that the check and balance there is probably the legislative process. It is the Joint Budget Committee working with the agencies like the Office of Information Technology and the Department of Personnel and Administration that set those figures. So we don't have, I think, certainly, I think there have been occasions where we might have provided feedback on the level of service we were getting, et cetera, but we largely don't have a lot of input in the rates that were assessed by that process.
Okay, any other questions about the budget? Do we want to make a recommendation that the budget move forward and be approved? Is there a
This is
motion?
Commissioner Ross. I'd move to approve.
Is there a second?
Commissioner Williams, second.
Okay, further discussion? Okay, surprise you a little bit. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against? Motion carries. Okay, we recommend moving the budget forward for approval. Thanks, guys. Now, John Lemay, we're gonna get right to you after we take a break. So let's,
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's take a break until 10:25. We'll come back and we'll get John to give us his presentation. even if it wasn't above grade, you're getting oxygen without the water. So it's not a good. Oh, okay. Want this thing on here? Okay, it's 10:25 by the old clock on the wall, and it's time to get back together. John,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
gotcha.
All right. Good morning. I was asked to provide a CDOT mid-winter, if you will, update on maintenance and operations to the STAC. And although, as everyone knows, spring officially begins in just a few weeks, which is awesome for me. Daylight savings actually starts this weekend, so spring is right around the corner. But March is our biggest snow month of the year statistically. We average almost a foot of snow in the greater metro area in March, and even more throughout the rest of the state. Our snowiest week of the entire year is the last week of March, and the second is the first week of April, actually. So we have some pretty good snow. It's not the champagne powder snow. It's that wet, heavy snow that you would probably see on the East Coast or up in the Pacific Northwest, but it's still snow and it's still water. So although we've made it through fall, relatively dry fall, we have had a pretty good winter through the majority of these months, and our biggest snow events are still yet to come. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we should see a lot more snow this season, the rest of this season, and we usually see snow deep into May in the high country, and then on the Front Range, like on the Palmer Divide, we'll see snow usually through Mother's Day weekend. A couple years ago, we had a pretty good storm. I think the last third week of May on the Front Range. So snow is in March is unpredictable, and spring is unpredictable. It's wildly unpredictable at times, which means we never really know what to expect. Some years we'll have little to no snow. Other years we'll have 2 or 3 blizzards. Usually the third week or the fourth week of March, we have a blizzard on the Front Range, and it's usually a pretty large one that encompasses multiple regions. So we got that to look forward to, and we can only prepare for whatever Mother Nature throws at us. And I promise you that we are prepared. The budget is not an issue when it comes to snow and ice, and I'll explain more about that in a second. Not that budget's not an issue; it's just we will accomplish our mission. Now, these two maps in front of you provide a great picture of what we're dealing with. A lot of times, people don't really understand from a statewide perspective on what we're dealing with. It's not been a majorly big snow year, but it's been a good snow year. Anytime we are at or above normal is a good snow year. And for most of the state, we're either at normal or slightly above. We're always a little lagging behind on the plains at this time of year. We picked up a little bit through March and April, as I said, and brings us up hopefully to total. Mountain snowpack on the Front Range mountain snowpack is doing really good. The only place we are slightly below normal in the low 90s is Alamosa area. So but we're not hurting at all. So that's great for us. In the long run, it prevents wildfires. So next slide. So this graph here was taken about the third week of February when we had our 21st storm event. We're now into 23 or 24 storm events, so it's a little bit higher than this. But you can see we often, or you might know this, but we often have between 23 and 23 to 27 major storm events each year. And we're at about 23 right now. So I hope that this trend continues because, as I mentioned, if we have a wet March and April, we'll have greatly reduced fire risks like we had last year. So next slide. So you might have to click a couple times to pull everything up, Aaron. Can you keep clicking? There you go. Keep going. Keep going, bud. I'm sorry. I probably should have took off the animation. I thought I did. A little bit more. There you go. Okay, so winter operations for us, no matter what time of the year it is, we're always in winter operations as a department, and specifically on the maintenance side of the house. So regarding winter season, no matter what time of the year it is, our primary mission, besides safety, is to ensure mobility. And it's just that simple. We really, really do focus on ensuring individual traveler safety and freight and commerce mobility. So, which is why we focus so much effort on winter maintenance, because it encompasses both of those. It's an individual traveler safety issue when the road is not, black or white, depending on, and dry. If there's any snow and ice on there or any kind of water accumulation, then that's an issue for us. So that's why winter maintenance is so important. So no matter what time of the year it is, we're always preparing, training, and operating and recovering from winter operations. And managing this $100 million statewide winter maintenance program is like planning a major military operation. And it is a continuous year-round process for us. The maintenance section superintendents and the RTDs are continuously focused on being able to be ready to respond to natural events and weather events, whether it's geotech, rockfall events, or it's a major storm, or it's wildfires. In fact, right now we're working on the FY 27-28 winter operations plans. That includes our budgets, anticipating additional costs in de-icers, our labor costs, looking at new processes to do stuff, and we're looking at technical advances in equipment. So we're never good enough, but we have a world-class winter operations program, and I want to keep it that way, and we only want to get better. So next slide. So this slide kind of shows you how we break down that almost $300 million program that we have in what we call MLOS, which is our asset management term for maintenance levels of service. So as of February 15th, we've plowed already about 4 million miles, and we still have a good 2.5 months left to go. So we should easily hit our 6 million mile average. So far this year, we've invested about 398 labor hours in snow removal operations, another 25,000 labor hours in operating heavy equipment like snow blowers, motor graders, and loaders with bull plows on them. And these actually operate on our highways and our high mountain passes. And we have another 5,000 labor hours invested in avalanche mitigation ops. Since mobility is so important, and not just for the economic benefits of tourism, but the freight mobility I'd mentioned for first responders to getting where they have to go, for essential services, whether it's getting children to school, or it's getting packages delivered to your home, or it's getting groceries to the store so that you can get to the store to eat. We want to make sure that the system is functioning for the residents of Colorado. Those are our number one stakeholders. And as such, the department, we dedicate about 100 million, or a third of our total budget, to these weather-related operations. As you can kind of see there, that big blue disc there. Last year, we spent about 36 million with a really good winter in the high country. This year, we're on track to spend right around that 30%, plus or minus a percent or so. So on average, with that $100 million a year, we spend it combating Mother Nature and old man winter. And even with these efforts, we can never best her or him. We just have to do the best we can with what we have. So next slide. One of the ways that we really try to make the best of what we have is through our JOA program. And if you remember last year when I came and spoke to the STAC with the midwinter update, the majority of that conversation was about our staffing shortages and would we be able to plow. And besides all of our stakeholders, the press and our sister states around us all wanted to know how we were going to do what we could do with what we had. So I don't have to tell you, it's hard to staff our maintenance patrols that are located in resort areas. So places like Vail and Steamboat, Aspen, Breckenridge, those places are extremely difficult for us to staff. And they probably always will be, but we are overcoming those slowly but surely. But one of the ways that we can have an immediate impact on those areas is to shift resources. So we shift resources from around the state. In the past, since 2014, every year we have shifted about 40 maintainers from around the state to get up to the high country to focus on areas that are understaffed because of vacancies, because they can't find housing, because they can't afford housing. And then if they can find housing, they can't afford the housing, they can't even afford the rent. So they have to commute from great distances away, and we don't pay enough. And we require employees to live within 30 minutes of their job location. So what we do is we send 40 maintainers, and we also surge additional maintainers from the Grand Junction area to support the I-70 mountain corridor from Glenwood Springs all the way to the Eisenhower. That used to actually extend all the way down to Golden, but our staffing issues have kind of like subsided a lot, and I'll talk more about that in a second. So we are really focused on that I-70 corridor from Silverthorne to Glenwood, and then the 82 corridor, where the need is the most. So to overcome that, we had created this joint operating area in 2014. And like I said, each winter we shift those 40 maintainers. Now these crews leave their homes and their families for 7 days. They travel up to the high country from places like Alamosa or Lamar or Lyman, and they make their way up to the I-70 mountain corridor. They spend 7 days in a hotel. They log more than 80 hours in a stretch, and they rotate back home for 7 days, and then they keep that up on a rotating cycle for about 7.5 months or so. In addition to that, we also shift heavy equipment and resources and operators. You might see them on the road, a CDOT lowboy with a loader or a motor grader. Now those guys are deploying from places like Greeley and Pueblo, and where they don't have too much snow at this time, or during a major mountain weather event. They will actually deploy from their home station up to the mountain corridor and operate heavy equipment in some of our more treacherous areas, if you will, like Loveland Pass and Berthoud Pass, and then Vail Pass during major winter storms. So surging those resources is one way that we can respond to those issues and have a more surgical approach to stuff versus just driving a bunch of plows up there. And this year we have had issues, and we have responded to major weather events on Berthoud Pass, on US 40, US 6 at Loveland Pass, one of our most active avalanche zones in the state, and it sees some of the worst weather. And then Vail Pass is also, because Vail Pass is actually kind of a remote pass for an interstate pass, and it's hard to get resources up there, so we have to shift resources from all over the state to do that. Now these efforts cost us an additional $3 or $4 million a year, but it is worth it for us, and it is a proactive program that we have in conjunction with our mountain safety program, which consists of, we surge the safety patrol vehicles that you see in the metro or on the Front Range. We shift those up into the mountain corridor on the weekends to help with ski traffic. We also have a heavy tow service. We have a lot of CMVs that refuse to chain up or just don't know about our chain laws, even though we aggressively message that. And we basically pre-position heavy tows along the mountain corridor to help clear when we have stalled CMVs. We actually send first line supervisors out in pickup trucks with tow straps, as well as larger maintenance vehicles out there to help as well. And we also provide funding for CSP and local sheriff's departments to staff our chain up stations to help us enforce the chain laws. And then we surge incident responders from the Front Range. We have a group of about 15 incident responders, and their job is specifically just to deal with incidents on the highway, to get those highways cleared and open, to prevent those secondary crashes that often happen when you have highways that are blocked with stop traffic. So next slide, Aaron. So to kind of answer the questions that I had a little bit before is, will we have enough to do what we got to do? I will tell you, we never have enough time, budget, equipment, and maintainers. But time is probably the number one thing that we're all short on, and it's the same with us too. So we have to prioritize our efforts. So safety is number one. It will always be number one. There's just no way about it. The individual traveler safety is number one. And that includes stuff like fixing guardrail end treatments and pothole repair and knockdown signs, traffic signals and stuff like that. Our maintenance crews will always address those issues. And if they don't know about them, I really would ask that the members of the STAC reach out to your RTDs and let them know if you have issues, and they can contact and get their maintenance crews marshaled and take care of those things pretty quick. Sometimes our crews are shifting around the state and they don't see stuff at one end of their area versus another, and they just don't know about it. So just reach out to them and we'll take care of it. The number two thing that we really focus on is system mobility. The state has to keep moving. It has to move. We have to keep commerce moving from one end of the state to the other. We have to make it where local residents can get to and from work. If at this time in our history, we just cannot close the state down because it snows. 100 years ago, 50 years ago, people would just shut down and stop doing whatever they were doing and just deal with the snowstorm. Those days are over. People expect to get from point A to point B no matter what's going on, and we really try to go out of our way to make that happen. There are some times where Mother Nature gets the best of us for short periods of time, and we'll have to close the highway for safety closures, like an avalanche hazards and stuff like that. But generally speaking, the system is open and functioning 99% of the time, and that's a rough number. Then after the safety and mobility, we really focus on maintenance. Infrastructure preservation, whether that is fixing a bridge joint that is not popped or not broken as maintenance, or doing surface preservation, laying small asphalt patches, crack sealing roads, stuff like that, ditch repairs and stuff like that. Those things, that comes next. Then it's environmental issues and then livability. So sometimes you will complain, people will complain to me or complain to the RTDs and the superintendents, why haven't you mowed? Why is this homeless camp here? Why is this mattress still on the side of the road? And to be honest with you, with a limited amount of time, they really do have to focus on where they get the most bang for the buck. So next slide. So a couple, like I said, last year, I think it was, I came to the STAC and we were talking about all of the things that we were doing, trying to overcome our approximate, I think it was July. We had about 36% vacancy rate, somewhere around 335, 37 entry-level maintainer vacancies. You know, after a lot of hard work by the department, each of our RTDs, the superintendents, are out there canvassing for new recruits. Our maintenance training academy came up with some pretty cool training stuff. I'll talk more about that in a second, entry-level training. But all this hard work between our department and the state, we're only sitting now at about a 13% vacancy rate. And that is the lowest vacancy rate we've had in about 15 years as a department. This is even before COVID. We still had about a 15 to 17% vacancy rate on our maintenance forces. So we're doing really, really well with filling our vacancies. We have a much more diverse workforce now. It's a little bit younger than it's ever been. We're trying to go after those 18 to 21-year-olds. We have a lot more women in highway maintenance division. So we're pretty proud of what we're doing. We've increased our salaries. The legislature and the state increased salaries across the board. Our executive management team, specifically our executive director, has increased our housing stipends exponentially. And then we developed the CDL training course that I talked about, which has really, really helped our recruiting efforts. We still have some traditional areas of vacancy, high vacancies in the mountain corridor, and I'll talk more about those in a second. Next slide, Aaron. Oh man, I love this picture. So our recruiting efforts are focused on changing the public's perception of highway maintainers. As you notice, I really don't say the word maintenance. Maintenance is something you do on the weekend when you're changing your oil or you're cleaning your refrigerator or you're washing your windows. That's maintenance. That's nothing. And this is not a career of last resort. You know, most people in the real world, I guess in the civilian world, think that our maintainers are pretty much guys or gals that are holding a stop and go paddle and filling potholes. And maybe you'd be surprised at how many people don't realize that our maintainers actually plow snow, that a lot of people think we contract that out. So I love this picture, and I try to talk about this picture whenever I can. This is a picture of bunker gear used by one of our maintainers stationed in the Hanging Lakes Tunnel Complex. And as you can see, it's well used just by the gloves that are by the helmet. Now, this same maintainer that uses the gear that you see right here responds to fire and life safety issues within Glenwood Canyon and the tunnel. And I can't think of a more dangerous thing to do than fight a tunnel fire. Now, this same person operates the tunnel complexes, and it's incredibly difficult systems or complex systems. This person responds to accidents, fights wildfires, vehicle fires and tunnel fires, repairs barriers, repairs surface pavement, repairs signs, replace signs, and electrical signs, electronic signs too. It deals with fiber optic cable, does flood mitigation, operates a UAV. Some of them, our operators are UAV pilots. They have explosive license. They're artillery howitzer-men. They deal with avalanches and rockfall and geohazards. They manage and conduct traffic control, one of the deadliest things you can do in the country right now. They operate commercial motor vehicles. They operate heavy equipment. Besides all that, they're civil servants. So they sacrifice. They can make more money working almost anywhere else. So these maintainers have delivered babies. They're the first person someone might see after a tragic accident, and sadly, they could be the last person someone sees at a tragic accident. So it's an incredible career that requires a multifaceted workforce, and we're really trying to change that perception with the general public. And I know, talking to some of my DPW director county peers and some of the large municipalities are trying to do the same thing too. So fact is, we do have some of the best maintainers out there, and it's their families that are behind them that support them, because it's not a career, it's a lifestyle, it's not just a job. So it's a pretty big deal. So I know I'm running short on time, and I'll pick things up a little bit here. I talk pretty fast. Aaron, next slide, please. So as you can see here, we made great progress as a department when it comes to paying our professional highway maintainers, and we have really made great advancements with our career track, our training opportunities. The state has really gone out of its way to improve the salary for our maintainers, and the governor and our executive director have really pushed for the highway maintainers, who are essential personnel. And we really saw that during when we were dealing with COVID, that our maintainers were out there working every day, that they are truly essential people, and they're being compensated for it now. So it's really paying off with our vacancy rates that are dropping significantly. Next slide, Aaron. So this is one program I am extremely proud of. We are the first state in the nation that created our own in-house CDL training program, and we also have our own licensing program. So we can bring in an employee, or bring in a brand new recruit, if you will, not to use a military term, but we can bring in a brand new employee with almost no experience whatsoever. And within 1 year, we're pumping out a fully trained professional highway maintainer. We've done over 200 people have went through our program in the past 2.5 years or so. And it's incredible about this is 90% of them are still with us today that completed the course. And the ones that are not with us either left for a substantially better job, or they had disciplinary problems and they were let go sooner or later. So 90% retention rate for somebody with a CDL and a CDL job is a pretty big deal. The industry standard for a over-the-road truck driver is 100% turnover. So we're doing really well. And considering what we ask these guys or gals to do, I couldn't be more ecstatic and proud of it. So next slide, please. I should have turned off that animation, Aaron. I'm sorry. So lastly, I'll address, this is how we're addressing our really difficult and hard to fill locations as a state. As I spoke earlier, it's hard to fill those positions in Vail and Aspen and Steamboat, and even Durango is exploding with the property there is exploding. So it's hard to fill those positions. So what we're doing is, during COVID, we used our vacancy savings money. One of the benefits having larger number of vacancies, and there's very few benefits to that. But one of those is at the end of the year, we had vacancy savings, annual salary savings. And we had went through the EMT to the Transportation Commission and asked to take that funding that we had saved and reinvest it back into our retention and recruiting programs. These housing programs are how we're investing that money. We have delivered one program in Glenwood. We have 4 or 5 apartments in Glenwood, right located next to our maintenance facility. And we partnered with the amusement park owner, and us, State Patrol, and their employees all live in the same facility, and it's right next to our Glenwood facility. And it's really helped us staff some of the hard to fill positions in Glenwood and on the 82 corridor as you're going up towards Aspen. We're delivering on our first housing project. Those houses that you see there in the picture are a representation of what our 12 units will look like in Fairplay. So if you're cruising through Fairplay, stop at 8th and Hathaway, and you can see our brand new 12 family homes that are going to be available for maintainers this summer. And Fairplay for us is a very strategic location because Highway 9 is the back door into Breckenridge and Frisco and on the I-70 corridor. And when something happens on the I-70 corridor, we want to make sure that Highway 9 is open and clear at all times. And so our Fairplay housing project will support the I-70 mountain corridor through the back door, if that makes sense. And then in Frisco, we're almost, I'd say we're probably 70% done with we have 11 condo units going in Frisco, and we're partnered with the town of Frisco. That should be delivered this December, maybe early January. We should see our first renters in there, our CDOT renters, and our State Patrol partners will be in there as well with us, hopefully by the 1st of February of next year. And that one specifically will help the I-70 mountain corridor from Silverthorne up to Eastvale. And then we're looking at 2 more housing. We're working with, we're going to build the same kind of project we have in Fairplay in Basalt. We're going to put 12 family homes there. And then we're working with the town of Steamboat and I believe Routt County at a land swap for some future apartments in downtown or right on the southern side of Steamboat. So with that, that's pretty much all I have. And I'll open up to questions. If you can go to the next slide, Aaron. So with
Questions
that,
for John?
yeah, I'm sorry about that, Chair. I know I talk a million miles an hour.
No, you're doing great. Okay, Brian.
Hey, John, I'm sure you knew you were going to hear from me.
Yes, sir.
Well, thanks for the presentation, and I definitely appreciate what you guys do. I know it's a lot of hard work maintaining these roads. Now, of course, that being said, Berthoud Pass, I feel has been mismanaged a bit this winter. The 4-day pass closure is something that hasn't happened in 40+ years. And then the lack of communication with the last closure that was supposed to just be a short avalanche mitigation turned into 5 hours. Kind of wondering what's going on, what's different this year than previous years?
Great question, sir. And I know you're frustrated. We're frustrated too. And my boss and my boss's boss are also frustrated. So when I will tell you specifically for like MLK and the large closure, I sent my meteorologist and my deputy director of operations up to meet with Winter Park and Fraser, DPW. I believe the county officials were there as well. The weather was something they had never seen before. They gave a full briefing on it. I will make sure that I have copies of all that for when we come up there in a couple weeks to meet with you guys. The communication issues, we basically reached out and whoever's in their office that they're in now, let's just say we're talking about County X, County Y, and County Z. We will reach out to the county emergency management folks and try to get updated contact information. And we really do try to manage our messaging through the counties and let the counties disperse that down to the local municipalities because there's so many. I mean, we're trying to stay in touch with everybody as much as we can. So anybody that in the future, anyone that you think, and as I emailed you back and forth, if you have any contacts, please contact us and we will get them on our distro list we have a weather call before every major storm as well. We brief our avalanche hazards, our mitigations and weather and our current operations. So yeah, we can always improve in communication. That's probably the worst or the most common thing amongst every organization. Communication could always be improved. So yeah, we do need to work on improving our communications. We're going to set up this summer a I-70 mountain corridor, maybe a huddle, if you will, or a pre-winter operations exercise where we get all the county DPWs and the larger municipalities like Vail and Frisco and Silverthorne, Winter Park, Fairplay, and all these larger towns, and get them all together in one room, kind of talk about what we can do, what we can't do, what our limitations are, and how we can best address that, and how we can improve messaging. So long drawn out answer. I promise you things will get better. I can't speak to mismanagement of the actual corridor itself. We have two separate maintenance sections there that's split at the top. And I think Jason's on. If I could pitch it to phone a friend and ask Jason RTD if he wants to chime in. I think you
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so Spencer Dickey's the maintenance superintendent up there, and Brian, we've made some changes up there. We're working on it. We know it's a challenging area, and we've had some extreme events going on up there the last couple of years, honestly. And as John mentioned there, that we have a lot of equipment that we've been surging up there. We're trying to get a better system in place so we can predict this. The wind is something we didn't predict for that 4-day closure. That was our biggest challenge, is the wind. And the way it just kept coming and coming at us. Our team couldn't get ahead of it. Whiteout conditions, and then really trying to get everything blown back and pushed back. And every time we thought we'd get ahead, we'd have another slide come down, and we buried our equipment multiple times. And we had to then dig our own team out, basically. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but we had 30 some slides up there that come down on us while we were trying to keep that thing or get it open. Every time we thought we were close, it changed again on us. So the team was working on it. We're trying our best. We'll continue to look and see what we can do and evaluate. But we are trying to surge more team up there to help. And I think we're getting better at that, of trying to get everybody to communicate, even within the region, but then across the region boundaries, over the hills, with the equipment and crews, both. Whenever we need help and we have a storm event that's coming in a certain area, we're going to try to surge crews up there and really focus on that area and do a little better job. But we struggled with that one. We had some of those slides had those trees come down in them, and we put our blowers down, because as we're trying to blow out the slides, we were sucking those trees through the blowers, and then we had to get our mechanics up there to get them running again. And it was just a series of events that kind of constantly just was coming at us, and it took us some time to get through it, but we are working on it, and we do hear you guys, and we know it was a huge impact. And we've met with Summit County as well, trying to figure out what we can do whenever we have those big storm events like that, how we can work with our Tim's group, how we message it better, how we work on clearing out the communities, especially on big weekends. Out and over a holiday weekend was really a difficult one. So I don't know, with that, you got any specific questions or anything else? We are coming up there to meet with you guys, and like John said, in a couple of weeks, we hope to explain and talk through a little bit better.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, so I'll let MLK sit, but the other thing that I'm really concerned about is the fact that we have a GasX system on the Stanley slide chute, and I don't know if it's been activated yet this year. Before that slide last week, that was obviously an avalanche mitigation thing, but it put 20 feet of snow on Berthoud Pass. The whole point of that system is to trigger it more often so that the slides are smaller and they don't hit the road, or if they do, it's minimal debris. I don't understand why we waited so long before we put that into place.
That's a great question. And I asked my winter ops team the same thing. And we basically initiate those systems on the recommendations of the Colorado Avalanche and Information Center. So we take whatever they tell us and then we usually operate it. It's very, very rare that they'll give us advice or give us guidance like on, hey, you should do this, this, and this, that we do not do it. We have to have a major discussion if we're not going to do it. So I believe the wind loaded up just like we talked about a second ago. They've talked about this cycle of winds and this atmospheric river stuff that's going on with the jet stream, that it just basically loaded up a lot of snow up there. But the system itself worked exactly how it was intended. We didn't have to use artillery or an avalancher. We were able, so it's pretty safe. But yes, it brought down all that snow, and I know it shut the road down for a long time. We actually shifted a bunch of other resources up there to get it clear, and it brought down a lot more snow than we thought it was going to bring down, to be honest with you. So it did, on again, doing the best we can with what we have is is all we can do. And we just honestly just ask for your patience. We don't message like we're doing a lot of avalanche mitigation. We'll message we're closing the road for winter maintenance, and then we'll do avalanche mitigation. As I kind of told you in that email, we get a lot of onlookers and looky-loos that'll drive up there just to sit and watch us shoot howitzers. And the Army in our lease program does not want us to advertise that for a bunch of reasons. So between that and our avalanchers, which are technically a form of artillery, we really do try to keep it as the messaging as generic as possible. So the closure was extended with tons and tons of snow coming down. So one of the things that we're really working on, and I asked my fleet guys to look into, is I'd like to start when we're stacking snow, is to start, instead of pushing it over or just pushing it back up and trying to pull as much down as we can, looking at hauling snow away. So we're looking at creating some water quality retention ponds where we could dump snow. I have a couple end dumps in the state that I'm thinking about next season, bringing up there with some operators to move snow out so that we're not just moving it around. And then also looking at the possibility of getting a snow melter and melting snow and putting it back down into the water system. So we don't move it around. It goes where it's intended to go. So that's something that some of our peers in the Northeast use a lot. And I think we could probably get away with doing that up there specifically for that. So we're always looking for better ways to do stuff. We're also looking at, like Jason mentioned, bringing some additional heavy equipment and staging it up there sooner so that we don't have that long drawn time of bringing equipment from the front range up. So, and the Greeley maintenance section has been all over this year. They have equipment pre-staged for us now for every single weather event. We got equipment staged now for us. So we are learning from our mistakes.
Okay, and I don't want to dominate this meeting with Berthoud Pass, but just one last thing. Do you think you can keep up with the snow? I mean, like I said, we're at 113% of snowpack. It's more than usual, but it's not an excessive amount. It just seems like you guys have been hit really hard by it. So is it something that you guys feel you can keep up with, or should we start looking at 4 lanes and snow sheds and that kind of thing on Berthoud Pass?
So we are looking, we are submitting some grants for some snow avalanche mitigation systems where we basically would put up some snow baskets up there. So it'd be a long-term mitigation where we hold the snow up top and it just slowly melts in the spring and just, it just provides better distribution of all the water, so to speak. So we are looking at that, but we can hold our own. It's just, this specific season, the wind has just been incredible. So that's been our thing. So, but I think, yes, sir, I think we can hold our own.
Okay.
Okay, Heather.
I know you're gonna love me, John, and I do appreciate it. And I'm gonna get back to Jeff a little bit too on this question. I'm very well aware of your maintenance limits and caps because I was the one that was pressing it 4 years ago to increase that cap. And
yes, ma'am.
Fortunately, it didn't go as high as I wanted it. But I guess my concern and constant, and I guess this goes in with the budget question, is, are we budgeting enough with the MLOS for all of these things to happen? And, with the increasing, like you're saying, of all of the costs, I mean, I know that RFPs have gone out the last couple of weeks up here for hot mix and asphalt and guardrail and mag chloride, and all of these things are not staying flat. I mean, I run a business and my business costs are 20% increasing year over year. So when we have an MLOS that's staying flat, how are we offsetting the need to do the things that are needed, like potholes, guardrail? I mean, this is the stuff that we all get calls from,
sure,
right? And this is the stuff that when it comes down to, even though TPRs really aren't in the maintenance world, we end up being the first line of defense for you all. And it's hard when we see the budget lines, and I hear you say you will always fix a pothole, but when does the budget get to a point where we say that needs to be higher because we aren't filling the need?
That's a great question, and I'll turn it over to Jeff in a second, but I'll tell you that we do some serious, as a department, some mental judo with our pie, and we really slice it in some pretty pretty incredible ways. All of the regions, RTDs and their management teams get together with the headquarters management teams, and we basically try to slice the pie as many different ways as we can and try to keep it equitable. I will tell you this. I tell people this a lot. We're not the Department of Highways anymore. We're the Department of Transportation, and there's so many needs out there that the public depends on us for bus staying and for bus service and for our co-trip applications and for fiber optics and for everything in between. So we have so many different pieces of the pie. To DAF's credit, they have increased MLOS from just probably 2017 or so, 18, from 262.5 million to this new fiscal year starting in July, it's just under 300 million. So we are making progress, man. We are. I mean, but we will, when it comes to maintenance repairs, the maintenance sections kind of prioritize what's good, what they can do and what they can't do. When they can't do something, then they get with their RTD and we try to roll it out into an engineering project, and that falls into a different category, a different pot of money. But I advocate excessively. I'm always in Jeff's office asking for more money and more funding, whether it's, and you are right. A snowplow before COVID was $262,000 a piece. Now they're almost 400. So we're ordering less snowplows and we're putting more money into maintenance, and we're trying to make what we have last longer and be good stewards of our limited taxpayer dollars. So to be honest with you, every specific section of road has slightly different priorities, and the maintenance sections are the ones that kind of like rack and stack what they're going to do. But potholes, like I told you in the chat message, if you have issues, please, and if anybody on the call or anybody in the STAC has issues, if you let me know, or the RTDs, then I will find a way to get your problem addressed.
I guess I maybe more specific is, and what I was saying with the Peter Paul scenario is, I understand you're going to fix the stuff, but then what ends up, the money has to come from somewhere.
Yes.
Right. So then what isn't getting spent, and where is that? What does that happen? Does that happen in the sense of, okay, now we can't do this project, or something else has a limit and we have to shrink something or whatever? And that's where the concern is of, how do we get you more money?
Help us raise the fuel tax.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, we're a pretty conservative state when it comes to taxing. So I'll turn it over to Jeff. Heather, he can answer better than I can. I would just be floundering here.
Great, thanks.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I have a whole lot to add from what we talked about earlier. I think we have endeavored over the last several years to grow every year the maintenance budget. Probably not as much as we'd like, but I think we've been doing our best to sort of keep up with increasing costs. We've also been trying to sort of address the other side of the ledger, which is to sort of take things out of the maintenance budget, take things out that we don't want to come out of the maintenance budget. And so, an example of that is, I think for a period of time, we had some of the costs on some maintenance costs associated with our express lanes that we had coming out of our MLOS budget, and we were able to fund that with a different source and reduce that cost. So I think we're looking at both ways to reduce costs or eliminate costs, pull them out of the maintenance budget, as well as trying to increase it. And then I think, from a capital construction funding perspective versus sort of the maintenance and operations side, from a capital construction perspective, I think a lot of it has to do with what we do working with you all to try to prioritize projects and to try to identify and prioritize projects that focus on asset condition. I think we have a lot of our 10-year plan that is focused on asset condition. We have a target that at least 50% of those funds focus on asset condition. In the next 2 years, you're going to be prioritizing the next 4 years of the 10-year plan, working with us on prioritizing that. And I think there'll probably be a push to sort of put even more towards asset management. I also think one of the things we have to keep in mind is that projects take a long time to make it through a programming and planning process and get delivered. And I think there's a lot of dollars that we have allocated towards asset condition in the last few years that we're waiting for the benefit yet, because the projects aren't done. They're underway. They're not being picked up in our data collection yet with respect to our pavement quality. So I think we have made a lot of investments and increases in the last few years, and we might not yet be quite at the point where we see all the benefits from that. But I think we'll be there soon, and I think we'll try to keep the focus on that in the next few years, including when we look to the next window of 10-year plan projects.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, John. That was really good.
Yes, sir.
You speak fast, but you cover a lot of material.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is rest area update. Hope.
Hi there, how are you? So my name is Hope Wright. I am the asset manager for buildings and rest areas. I'm just going to give you a quick update on where we are with the rest area program. Next slide. So our agenda, I'm just going to go give you guys a brief history of rest areas, how we became an asset, what the inventory has looked like over time, talk about historic funding, and then some challenges that we face. Next slide. So in 2018, or actually in 2016, the Transportation Commission actually commissioned a study to evaluate the state's network of rest areas for either improvements or closures. As a result of that study, the Transportation Commission overwhelmingly agreed that all rest areas should remain open. This study was the result of several rest area closures, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But the result of becoming an asset is that we finally got dedicated funding, which Jeff talked a lot about the asset management program earlier. There's 12 assets, and rest areas became the 12th. And so we became an asset in 2018. However, because of the 4-year funding cycle, we didn't actually receive funding for the rest area program until 2023. So I'll talk about that all a little bit in more depth a little bit later. Next slide. So our historic inventory, as you can see, in 2008, we had 33 rest areas, and as it stands today, we have 26. So those 7 rest area closures were really the result of just deferred maintenance and very expensive treatment items that had to be fixed. Most of them were required closure because their wastewater treatment systems or their water treatment systems had aged out. Those are very expensive items, and I'll talk about that again later. And so as you can see, we're very, this is how far we've come. And I'll talk a little bit about where we want to go in a little bit more detail later on. Next slide. So this is the map of the permanent closures. As you can see, we had 2 on I-25, 2 on I-70, well, actually 3 on I-70, 1 in the mountain corridor and 2 out east. And then we had 2 others in the northeast corner of the state. And so, as I mentioned earlier, those were the closures that kind of resulted in the study that the Transportation Commission commissioned in 2016. Next slide. This is the current state of the assets. Again, 26 rest areas. Right now, only one is not permanently closed. Only one is closed, and that is the Vail Pass rest area. That's under construction. Actually, I should say there are 3 closed. There's 2 north of Pueblo. However, we do have funding to reopen those. We are going to reopen those in a joint location at another mile marker that is going to coordinate with an underpass project that the region is pulling together. Those 2 rest areas were closed because we do not have potable water. We don't have a wastewater treatment system. And so the new rest area will have potable water, and we will connect to Pueblo West's sewer system. So we have great faith that these will be a very successful reopening of the 2 rest areas in Pueblo. And then you might all know that the Vail Pass rest area is under construction. We're expecting that to reopen at the end of this summer. Next slide. And here are some planned improvements. So in fiscal year 24, as I mentioned earlier, Vail Pass will be wrapping up. And then we are also starting Glenwood Canyon. So for the next 6 years, something in Glenwood Canyon rest areas will be under construction. So each year we'll focus on one large item cost. And right now that's the wastewater treatment systems. These are not on city water. These are not on city sewer. So we have to treat the wastewater, and we have to have clean potable water. So we have to make it. So we have wastewater and water treatment systems to handle all of that. And they're all failing. So this summer we're starting with No Name, and then we'll move down the line to each rest area after that for the wastewater treatment system. And then once those are all completed, we'll actually start on the reconstruction of each of those rest areas in the canyon. But in the meantime, we're not putting all of our efforts toward Glenwood Canyon. We're focusing in other areas as well. Araba and Holly, that should say Holly, not Holy, I apologize. Those are both getting interior remodels. Those will start this summer. Virginia Dale, which is up north near Ted's Place, will get a septic and plumbing upgrade. And then Shaw Creek, which is down near South Fork, that's actually getting completely reconstructed. We're building a bigger rest area there, and I think it'll be quite the rest area once it's done. And then as you can see, we have some other planned projects. Pueblo, we do have the funding from the TC to replace those. We're working with the region right now to procure the land. And then we'll start design as soon as we know exactly where we're going to put that. And then we have some other minor improvements that really involve around energy improvements and reducing the consumption of water. So we've done a lot of xeriscaping, we've done a lot of HVAC upgrades, and we have many more of those planned once we have the budget for each fiscal year. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we have initiated quite a few greening initiatives statewide. We've completed 6 LED and low fixture retrofits at six different rest areas, and we have 6 more planned. And then xeriscaping at 3, 2 more planned, and then energy efficient HVAC at 2, and then 2 more planned in 25. Next slide. We also have worked on some partnerships and some local involvement. So our current partnerships right now are we partner with the Office of Economic Development, their Colorado Tourism Office. They staff the Burlington, Fruita, and Julesburg rest areas. The City of Sterling, they staff the visitor center or the Sterling rest area as a visitor center. And then we also have some support from the National Highway Freight Program for the Vails Pass rest area. We have a couple more opportunities to partner with CTO for the Fort Collins, Vail Pass, and Trinidad tour or welcome centers. And so those negotiations are underway right now. We're also working with the freight programs for some potential support for Pueblo rest area. And as I mentioned earlier, we're partnering with Pueblo West for water and sewer at the new Pueblo rest area. And then Vail Pass, we have Forest Service is taking the recreational oversight, and they provided funding to us to construct them their own little separate building that will act as kind of that central hub for that. And then we have some, and then we have actually received some funding from CTO to do some improvements at the 3 rest areas that they currently manage for us. So we were grateful for some extra funding for rest areas. Next slide. This slide is really the slide that we give every year at budget setting, and this kind of just shows our historical performance. So our goal is that all rest areas statewide should be at a letter grade C or better. 90% of those rest areas should be at a letter grade C or better. And right now we're at 69%, and you can see that it's kind of fallen throughout the years. We're all fighting for the same pot of money, so we're all doing the most we can with the funding that we get. You know, hopefully this trend starts reversing once a lot of these other improvements are taken care of. Next slide. So there are some other federal code and state statute impacts that impact our ability to generate funding at the rest areas. Currently, the only opportunity to generate revenue at our rest areas is through advertising. Any other commercial activities are prohibited by state and federal codes. And even then, the advertising at rest areas is severely limited. It's limited to only within the rest area. It can't be seen from the main traveled road. It can only be one sign in each travel direction at each rest area. So that eliminates the possibility for us to do anything else like EV charging, what seems to come up a lot, food services, any gas stations. So right now we are pursuing those, some advertising opportunities, and we'll see how those go. Next slide. And now the wastewater treatment plants, I just wanted to touch on this very quickly. They are very expensive. They're $2 to $3.5 million each. We just replaced the Vale Pass wastewater treatment system. That one actually cost $3.5 million. We're estimating that the ones in the canyon will cost around $2 million. And as I mentioned, we're going to be replacing one per year, and then we're going to be going back into the canyon and replacing one rest area per year. So while Glenwood Canyon is going to get a lot of attention in the next couple of years, it is really because if we let these wastewater treatment systems fail, I mean, I don't know what the consequences will be, but I do know that those rest areas are are required per the environmental impact statement for Glenwood. So we're going to do everything we can to make sure that Glenwood is operating as it should. Next slide. Some challenges for us. We have a backlog of rest areas that have never had funding, right? So we're really focusing on the worst first. We would really like to start focusing on keeping our rest areas in the current letter grade, not letting them slip, which we're doing everything we can, but we do have a backlog of rest areas that just need attention. So we're focusing on those first. We're also facing some potential statutory changes, some potential and some realized, that are going to add to our costs. And there is a potential that we might have to start using federal funds, which is likely going to increase our costs for rest areas. There are some requirements that we don't currently have to abide by that definitely will add some costs to our current projects. And then our yearly budget is around $4 million per year, and that's not enough to do much. So one rest area building is well over $4 million. So we have to use multiple years of funding to fund those. But yet again, you know, all assets are dealing with these issues, and we're approaching them as best we can, and we'll just keep moving forward. Next slide.
So there was a question about, what about EV charging? And of course they said free EV charging.
Well, I don't have I would have to probably defer to the regions on that. They actually handle the utility bills, and I'm not sure if we can give away free charging. I don't know if Kay Kelly's on this call, and B, I don't know if the regions would have the funding to actually pay the utility bills to give away free EV charging.
Thanks. Okay, Eva.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what kind of input or public input was part of that work, just because I know the location that is going to, suggest a new location for that new spot is about 4.5 miles away from a new travel center, which is only like 5 minutes away from where, you know, you'd get food and gas and all that stuff. So I'm just wondering why that location was picked, if there was some sort of outreach for that specific location. I just want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible, just because, I mean, it's only about a 5-minute drive from where somebody could stop and actually have access to all the other amenities that are at a truck stop.
So a couple of things about Pueblo. We did reach out to Pueblo West to see if they could bring water and sewer to the existing facilities. That's really the only way that we could get those operational again. We're out of room on the northbound to add another septic system. The southbound route, we have literally tried everything to get that one operational. And that cost would be about $7 to $10 million just to get water and sewer to each building. And they're not even sure if we could do it. We'd have to cross under some railroad tracks. It just might not happen. The other option, moving it closer to town, is about 5 miles closer than our rest area, right? So the rest areas were, I can't remember exactly, but they're like 5 miles past 108, which is where we're planning the new rest area. So yes, there might be some overlap in services, but we've gotten a lot of feedback from the traveling public that they would much rather stop at a rest area than at the Loves at 103 or 107. I can't remember what exit Loves is at. So that answering that question. But then secondly, I feel like we're being pretty fiscally conservative by co-locating 2 rest areas into 1 building. As I mentioned, rest areas are very expensive, around $6 million just to replace the building and associated infrastructure. We think for 10 million, we can move it closer to town. We can combine north and southbound into 1 rest area, combine it with that overpass project, increase the parking, the truck parking, double it, add parking for people who use that more as a park and ride, if you will, to car share. So we think we can solve a lot of issues. And then on top of that, Pueblo West has agreed to give us water and sewer, which is huge. And they're only about a mile away for water and a half a mile away for sewer. So that cost is, minimal compared to the other rest area, bringing water and sewer to the other rest areas. Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
So did we finish, Hope, or is there more?
Nope. We're all done.
Okay, other questions for Hope? Okay, Vern.
Yeah, I hope you mentioned the new rest areas by Pueblo. I'm wondering what will happen to the old rest areas. Will they be used for anything else, or what's the plan for those?
We have not made a determination yet. I assume that we'll demolish the buildings and then leave the others for emergency truck parking. But we would need to coordinate that with the region and maintenance.
Thank you.
Okay, others? Okay, so moving right along. Thanks, Hope. Moving right along, other business. It's noted down there at the bottom of the other business that we give a special thanks to Keith Baker for his years of service with STAC. And I'd like to make sure that everybody understands that indeed is a big thing, because he's put in a lot of time. So Keith was the representative to the Federal Lands Access Program as the STAC representative. And so we need a new one. And so is there anybody that would like to do that? So I think there's a representative from Lands Access Program available here on this program to answer questions.
Yeah, I'm available. My name is Jill Locken. I'm with Federal Highway Administration, Central Federal Lands. And so, I can provide a little bit of quick insight into the access program and just a really high level idea of what the member being a member on the committee means, if that's helpful.
It would be helpful, Jill, and amount of time involved with the traveling, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a short presentation for STAC in 2022. I know it's been a while and folks probably all weren't there, but just a really quick high level, Central Federal Lands, who we are. So we're a branch of Federal Highway Administration, but we're a branch that actually, I like to think of us, we're a little more like CDOT. We do roadway design. We have a geotech engineering group, hydraulics design. We take projects from planning all the way through construction. We cover 14 states in the central region. So we have, all the way from Texas up to South Dakota, North Dakota, over to California. So that includes, of course, Colorado, which our office is located in Lakewood, Colorado. We work closely with our Fed aid partners. So you may be a little more familiar with that branch of Federal Highway Administration, but part of what we do is we administer the Federal Lands Access Program, and that's a Title 23 funding source. It's kind of like a grant program, but it's given by formula, and it provides funding for states and counties, cities, local agencies to improve transportation facilities leading to or accessing federal lands. So a lot of times, cities and counties focus their efforts on their roads, or state DOTs focus their efforts on the state highways. And then our federal land management agencies, Park Service, they focus their efforts within the park. So this funding source, I think, was really created to bridge that gap and to provide a funding source that's dedicated to those roads between the two, accessing those fed lands. So we get, let me see how much Colorado gets. Of course, I should have had this open. It's probably in my little presentation here, but we do a call for projects. The main lift by the committee members. So it's a 3-person committee. There's a federal representative, which is myself. There's a state DOT representative, which has been Jared Esquivel, if I'm saying that right, but he's also retiring. And then Keith Baker, who, congrats to Keith Baker, has been the representative for us as well. So what we do is it's usually 1 to 2, maybe during a call, 3 meetings a year. So it's not a real heavy lift. Those meetings are a couple hours. We, provide guidance and make decisions on all the programs in Colorado Flap. So obviously we have a real big project in Estes Park right now, the downtown Estes Park loop conversion. So we make decisions on that. If costs increase by $1 million, the programming decision committee has a conversation about what does that look like? Do we want to fund that with flat funds? During an open call for projects, we review applications, and in that application review, we select projects that we want to move forward within the access program. So the lift, I would say, is, maybe 10 hours a year, just meeting with the other committee members. The other thing I do is I try to provide you all updates in between meetings. So photos of active projects, status updates on projects, just so that you kind of know what's going on using these funds in the state. So the only requirement, the local representative has to be for an appropriate political subdivision of the state, so local government, from an organization or entity that is suited to represent the local entities responsible for building, operating, or maintaining publicly accessible transportation facilities that are located on, adjacent to, or provide access to fed lands. So local rep works cooperatively with the representatives of the local transportation service providers and the fed lands office as well. The local representative may not be affiliated with or work for the executive branch of the federal or state government.
Well, this is Holly. I really don't know if I can volunteer John, but if I can, I'd like to say the reason why I volunteered him is because the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments also includes Park and Teller County, which have way more lands. I mean, we have a little bit of land in El Paso County that we consider federal land, but just wanted to say that there's enough in Park and Teller, and I can't volunteer Dick Elsner because he's term limited. So, but that was why I wanted to volunteer him, but he might not, I don't know if he counts as, he's an alternate right now, if he would count as someone who would qualify for it.
Yeah, and so and they don't have to be associated with their the hope is that they're making unbiased decisions on eligibility and funding for the entire state of Colorado. So, even if like our CDOT rep, we don't want them only voting for CDOT, projects that they applied for, or, saying, yes, let's give Estes Park more money, but no, not Nichols Road down in Pueblo West. So it's very much, it's always been a very positive experience, a collaborative committee. There's 14 different ones with central federal lands across our 14 states. And it's unusual that we have both committee members retiring and leaving at the same time. So we'll be looking to fill those soon.
So I could just comment that there are two projects that occurred in the Gunnison Valley TPR. One was the Cottonwood Pass paving on the Gunnison side from Highway 135 over to Buena Vista. And this is our Cottonwood Pass, by the way. I just want to mention that there are Cottonwood Passes all around the state, and this is ours. And that got finished, and so that works well. And the other one is being finished now in what's called the Little Blue Creek Canyon on Highway 50. And they contributed about half of the money to do that project, whereas CDOT contributed the other half. So it's a good program. It's a good project. So I think John is willing to volunteer, because I think I had a little chat thing saying he's okay as long as he qualifies. He said, if MPO staff is eligible, happy to help. I am not an elected official, only an alternate to the STAC representative. So
yeah, I'm just trying to read this. I don't have another MPO, but it just says, you know, as long as this is from the legislation, should be from an organization or entity that is suited to represent the local entities responsible for building, operating, maintaining these facilities. I don't, you know, I don't see anything that would preclude that. As long as they're not part of the state government.
he's an employee of a municipality.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, with that, so is there a nomination for John?
I nominate John.
Is there a
This is Dick
second?
Elsner. I second John because I'm term limited and I think it's great.
Okay, good. So, further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, John, you're our representative.
I shall do my best.
John, if you could possibly drop your email in the chat so I could access that and save it, I'll reach out to you separately and provide you more information to what you just signed up for.
Good. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, let's see. We gave Keith our thanks for his years of service. Upcoming TPR administrator meeting.
Hey Vince, do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think everyone, we sent out an email a few weeks ago, end of February. We are planning to hold a TPR administrator meeting following the May STAC meeting, which will be in person. The reason we are having this meeting is this was one of the recommendations that came out of the 1101 TPR boundary study. And we want to make sure that the administrators understand and are comfortable with their roles and responsibilities, and to share best practices amongst one another. So the study recommended that we have or host these meetings biannually. So the first one we're hoping to host in May. We would love it if people could attend in person. I think that will just allow for more open discussion, and we really want these to be very collaborative. So keep a lookout for more information. Erin or Kathleen, did I miss anything you wanted to share? Okay, just wanted to give everyone a heads up about that.
Any questions? Okay, so the question is do the administrators know they're administrators?
I believe so. I hope so. If you have a question on who your TPR administrator is, or if they don't know who they are, please reach out and we'll start there. But I think we've checked that box, but the rest we'll hope to make sure everyone's up to speed on at the meeting.
Good. Okay.
Oh, Marissa?
Yeah.
This is Kathleen. We may want to also mention that 2 of the MPOs are not included. Oh. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 of the MPOs, Pikes Peak and North Front Range, they have only urban areas of their MPO. And so this is related to the Rural Planning Assistance Grant Administration for the most part. But if they care to join us, they could be welcome. But right now they're not on the save the date invitations.
Other questions?
Yes, Kathleen, this is Holly. I think we get that. So thank you for clarifying that. But one less meeting to attend.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, just a reminder, our next STAC meeting is on April 4th. That's 4/4/24. Okay, and that's an April meeting. And remember that the May meeting is an in-person meeting. Okay, I just want to let you know too that there's a track meeting this afternoon at 1:30. And I'll be attending that. With that, unless there's something else to be brought before the STAC, I'll consider STAC adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Drive home safely.